reverse sweep, normal sweep shot. Great shots in the 2020 cricket, but I'm not so sure that it's the right way to go about it in Test match cricket, unless the pitches are very, very good, of course. But the pitches they played on offered the bowlers a lot of help, and they just didn't trust their defence. That's what it seemed like from back here. They just didn't know how to cope with the ball turning, and they just lost their way. They're a better team, as they showed in the third test, than they showed in the first two test matches. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this next test match and what sort of pitch has been prepared for it.
All right, we're all looking forward to that test match. But this particular broadcast is all about the India-Australia relations. And Alan, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. You've toured India many a times. I'm going to talk about some of the memories. But let's start with that 1987 World Cup win. You know, I remember Eden Gardens. You were playing against England, and I think 100,000 people would have turned up, and out of all of those people that had turned up, to your surprise, I think they were all supporting the Australian team. Then you did a lap of honour. I remember those visuals on television. Did your view of Indians and Indian cricket fans change after that sort of reception that you got, winning the World Cup here on Indian soil?
Yeah. I mean, that was the start of Australia starting to work the way back into, you know, better cricket performances. Up until then, we'd been pretty dry cupboards as far as trophies and things were concerned. We'd struggled for 2 or 3 years there, and it was a little bit against the odds. I mean, there were probably better teams than us actually at that World Cup. You know, the West Indies, England themselves, India, Pakistan. They were tremendous sides, but we were very well drilled, if you like, with our coach Bob Simpson. We really worked hard on, you know, those little 1%ers that you can sort of make a difference in games. You know, just very good fielding. We had a bit of a game plan that we stuck to pretty rigidly, and it sort of worked for us. I mean, we got lucky along the way with a couple of the results, but yeah, that you do need a little bit of luck to go right through a World Cup. So, yeah, back in 1987, that was absolutely fantastic. The England boys came into our rooms. I mean, there was no sad faces kicking cans around the place. They came in and celebrated, you know, that we'd won, but they had had a good tournament themselves. So, yeah, from that point of view, that's good to see that camaraderie that's still alive and kicking between combatants. You know, out in the field, yep, go hard. Off the field, take it easy and enjoy each other's company.
Talking about old memories, we talk about and why India versus Australia has now suddenly emerged as the #1 battle in cricket is because, you know, you have these two tough teams going up against each other. Alan, would you say this sort of rivalry, I know there were many a contest before that, we're celebrating 75 years of India-Australia cricketing relations, but that 1986 tight test match in Chennai, do you think that was the catalyst in terms of turning the India-Australia series as it is right now?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, that was a start. You know, Dean Jones making a double hundred, David Boone, you know, scoring heavily on day one. We were very fortunate. We won the toss in that first game, and as everyone knows, the Chennai pitch back in those days was, you know, a bit of a batsman's paradise. But I still talk to friends about that particular game. We made 574, I think, for about 7 declared, and should have lost the game. So you can have pitches that are batsman friendly to start with, and the game just quickens up as you start getting into days 4 and 5. So it was a fantastic game of cricket. I've asked Ravi a few times why he took a single on the you know, the third last ball, but he was sort of adamant that he wanted to tie the game up, and then he was quite confident that Maninder Singh at the other end would get a single somewhere, but wasn't to be. And yeah, absolutely fantastic result. Just a result because, you know, we'd declared twice, and good on India because they kept chasing the score. I think they had to get 348 or 350, somewhere around there, on the last day. So, yeah, fantastic from Ravi. Every time we'd sort of start attacking, he'd keep whacking them over the top, and so it was an in-out sort of scenario over that last afternoon. It was, yeah, it was just the most fantastic, you know, result you can think of, and then just the heroics from, you know, Jones and Boone, and Kapil Dev himself made a great 100 in that game. It was just a fantastic game of cricket, and gee, you know, you get some tight results, but it doesn't get any tighter than that. And I think the relationships from that particular game, you know, that they were bred, and then of course our own cricket, we started to get a bit more confidence about, the group of players we had in the team, and everyone started to, get better and better over the next 12, 18 months. And yeah, it was I suppose we'd been 2 or 3 years in the doldrums, so it was time to get out of that and get on and start winning a few games.
Alan, stay on with us. Couple more questions we'd love to ask you. But before that, Sunny Gavaskar was also talking to India today, and these are his thoughts on this historic India versus Australia Test match.
Oh, look, I'm looking forward to this game because...
Well, I can tell you, this is the first time I've actually, I'm coming to the ground when the moon is setting and not the sun is rising, because I've taken a couple of pictures of the moon set as we've come to the ground, and it's still around. So the moon will probably take another 20 minutes for the moon to set. But so it's a different feeling altogether, but quite exciting to have the two leaders of the countries which are going to be doing battle on the cricket field, to have the two leaders coming down to especially watch the game. I think that's a very exciting feeling.
Yeah, and maybe they should go and do the toss.
Saibhai, also in terms of, we're celebrating 75 years of India versus Australia cricketing relations. You've been part of many India versus Australia contests as well. Over the years, that first tour, 1947, and then from there on, what are your abiding memories of India versus Australia cricket?
Yes, I think this rivalry is, I don't know about the Ashes situation, but I think this rivalry definitely is something that the cricket fans of both countries, and in fact, cricket fans all over the world look forward to, because it is well fought. Teams are very, very, very competitive. There's some unbelievable talent in both the teams. There are great players in both the teams. And so therefore, I think cricket is always very exciting when India and Australia play against each other.
All right, Sunny Gavaskar, thanks so much for joining us. He, of course, has to go for the all-important pitch report as well as the toss. But Alan Border still with us. Alan, we were talking about the memories of India versus Australia. There was a time here in India that most Indian cricket fans really looked up to the Australian teams because they were dominating world cricket. The teams that you helmed, the teams later captained by Steve Waugh, then the teams captained by Ricky Ponting, they were really dominating international cricket, and to beat Australia used to be a massive, massive thing here in India. But over the last decade or so, or probably slightly less than that, India have gone on to Australia, won 2 test series there. That's a very uncommon sight. Now dominating at home, this is something India always did. Do you think that balance of power, just in terms of cricketing prowess, has gradually shifted from Australia to India now?
Oh, most definitely. I think India have got the upper hand just at the moment. And they'll get a chance, won't they, in England at the Oval? Looks like these two teams are going to play again in that World Championship game, final game at the Oval. So that'll be thrilling in itself, just to watch them go at it in neutral country. But yeah, as you said, the rivalry has just built up slowly but surely. There was a period there where the Australians were very, very dominant, and don't forget, we didn't tour India all that often. We came, like before I came in 1979. We weren't here from 1969, so it's a big gap, between teams playing against each other. So that's how far India have come. I mean, sort of fairly humble beginnings with their cricket team to just a world power, and probably the world power financially, and with the cricket team they put together, absolutely fantastic. So they're winning games away from home. So I'm really looking forward to, well, firstly this Test match, see how this series finishes, and then see how they do battle in neutral territory over at the Oval in London.
Okay, Alan, before we let you go, final question. Tell us a bit about Anthony Albanese. Is he a big cricket fan? I reckon he's not as big a fan as John Howard was. I believe he used to love his cricket. But previously, any incident that you had of a Prime Minister, coming either for a tour game, playing a tour game, anything that you can share with our viewers?
Look, most of the time, remember Bob Hawke? He was a Prime Minister for a lot of years there, and he reignited the Prime Minister's 11 game that was played against the touring team every year. So, he was very big supporter of Australian sport, but particularly our cricket. He wasn't a bad cricketer himself until he got hit in the eye. I don't know whether you've seen that footage, but someone bounced the Prime Minister and hit him right in the eye and smashed his glasses and got a nasty cut. So he took a few for the team. So that's that's the Prime Minister you want to see. And Anthony Albanese is he's a knockabout bloke as well. Loves his sport. He's probably more into rugby league, which you guys wouldn't know much about here. But it's a pretty tough old sport. And he's from the school of hard knocks, and he's done fantastically well to be in the position he's been in. And we're really thankful for his support.
All right, Alan Border, thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to India today. Of course, we'll have Alan back a little later in the day to talk about the events that will unfold in Ahmedabad. As we've been building up here on India today, you've got the heads of state, Prime Minister of Australia, Prime Minister of India, going to be witnessing the first day of the test match between India and Australia. This, of course, is the grand finale of the Border Gavaskar series. And just to make your Thursday morning perfect, we had both Border and Gavaskar speaking to you ahead of that historic moment. That's a first. Prime Minister, a bowler bouncing a Prime Minister. There have been occasions of other Prime Minister, Gaurav, I must tell you. I believe Nawaz Sharif once played a touring West Indies game. He said he would love to open, and he went out to open without a helmet. I heard a story from Imran Khan saying that we told him, there is Michael Holding there. There might be Malcolm Marshall. Are you serious you want to go out without a helmet? And the first ball that was bowled to him was a bouncer. So the cricketers don't really care if it's a head of state on the other end.
It's the head of government that goes. Well, we also have Amrit Mathur joining us on the broadcast. And I'm sure you have many, many stories to tell us about what's it like, when you have heads of state or heads of government watching these matches. What's it like for the players?
Well, they're aware that it's a big occasion and somebody major is watching. So it's at the back of the mind, but they're professional. They go about the jobs as they would normally. But yes, they are aware and they realize it's a big occasion. Everybody's watching, and they're also, I'm sure, making that extra effort to do well on that particular day.
Now, when it comes to this match, when it comes to India-Australia, we asked both Sunny Gavaskar and Alan Border whether this was the new Ashes, whether the rivalry rivals that or is a bigger rivalry now. What's your take on that?
Absolutely, because these are two quality teams, and Test cricket, to do well, requires this competitive sort of battle between top teams, top players playing, and that's what people look forward to. Because unless you have quality and it's competitive, Test cricket is not going to be having a good ride in the future. And this is as good as it gets, because Australia is the top team, India is right up there, and it's an intriguing first day, last Test match of a series, which has been very sort of keenly contested. So I'm sure everything looking forward to a great contest this morning.
A great contest this morning at a time when there has been controversy about the pitch, controversy about a pitch that favors India, but that's something that the Australians learn to live with if they're touring India.
Well, at least those are the noises that are coming out of the Australian camp. It's lovely to hear, I know all the controversies at the periphery. It's lovely to hear Steve Smith, the captain of the Australian team. He was asked about the pitch. He says, listen, we have no problem. You serve us any sort of pitch, we will go out and play. And I think that could be one of the reasons why they did so well in that previous Test match. Now, remember, Gaurav, we're talking about this being a big occasion, but you must also focus on the fact that for Australia, it's going to be a very important Test match. Remember, they are trailing 2-1. If they were to win this Test match, I would argue that this would probably be the best performance by a touring team, or at least one of the best performances by a touring team in India, because you know how tough it is to win in India. To win 2 Test matches in India seldom happens, and if the Australian team can do that, yes, they've lost the Border Gavaskar trophy. That's going to remain with India. But even if you win 2 Test matches, so it's become very, very crucial in terms of the cricketing angle, but of course there's the diplomacy angle as well. And I think your soft powers are usually Bollywood, but that's when you're dealing with, let's say, certain European countries or with the Middle East. People love your Amitabh Bachchans and Shah Rukh Khans. Yeah. But when it comes to Australia, I think you will have that soft power from cricket, because you may not have your Bollywood stars who are very big in Australia with the Australian public at large, but Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma, R. Ashwin, they are massive superstars in Australia at the moment.
Because Australia is a big sporting country. I mean, sports is huge in Australia. And just now, Australia is also talking about why Australia needs India, not just sports, but technology. Technology is something that we were talking about, not being able to get Gavaskar and border together. But Australia is looking a lot at in India, Australia getting together, moving forward on technology.
Yeah, it's not just cricket. There's trade, there's relations between the two countries, they're both democracies. So there's lots which is common between India and Australia. But just get back to the point Nikhil made. India has won the border Gavaskar Trophy. We are 2-1 up. Australia is behind. But there's much riding for both teams in this game. India needs to win to be able to make the World Test Championship final. Australia need to win just to make sure that they have a record which is decent in India. Yeah. As Nikhil said, it's very, very difficult for foreign teams to win here. And if they can come back and square and win this game, square the series, I think it'll be a fantastic achievement. And I think that's what's motivating them to square the series and to win in adverse conditions in front of the Prime Ministers being present. Great occasion.
It indeed promises to be. There's a chariot there for Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, and for the Prime Minister of Australia, and that's the cavalcade. We're seeing these are live images of the cavalcade of the Prime Minister. He will be there to receive the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. I quickly want to cut across to India today's Saurabh Akhtania. You see the tricolour fluttering so proudly on the Prime Minister's car. Saurabh, tremendous excitement at the Narendra Modi Stadium. All eyes now on the cavalcade on its way there. It's being called a sixer when it comes to India-Australia diplomacy.
Well, let me tell you, Gaurav, what an excitement over here, an electrifying atmosphere outside the stadium. Just imagine what will be the atmosphere inside this Narendra Modi Stadium. Let me tell you, the Australian team and Indian team is already inside the stadium. What we are also been told that Gujarat Chief Minister Bhupendra Patel has also reached the stadium, and just in some time from now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also reach the Narendra Modi Stadium. Remember, this is the very first time when Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself will be watching the match inside the world's biggest cricket stadium, and the excitement level over here. Just look at the crowd over here. Ask my camera person Prakash to show you the visuals outside this gate number 2. This is the common visitors gate entry, and look at the situation over here. And so huge. This will be completely jam-packed stadium inside, and the atmosphere will be absolutely electrifying. Most of the fans over here are Indian fans. This will be a very plus point for Team India over here. And look at this over here, Gaurav. Continuously people are coming and they are going inside. So there are some issues with people going inside because there are security protocols which has to be followed. Therefore, here you can see that how there are people over here. There is extra police force which has been deployed right now. Let me tell you, over 3,000 police personnel are been deployed at the entire periphery of the stadium over here. It is going to be a showstopper which is going to start in just some time from now. We have been told that there is a chariot in which both the PM are going to ride and take a lap of the entire stadium. And let me tell you, Australian PM actually came to Ahmedabad yesterday. He first went to Gandhi Ashram, then from Gandhi Ashram he went to Governor House, and let me tell you, he also played a Holi. So he's also getting a taste of Indian culture over here, and that is what the excitement level and the way the Australian PM has been welcomed over here. I'll cut across to the live visual, more visuals outside this particular statement. So you can see over here, Gaurav, the people.
Saurabh, when we are looking at these crowds, Saurabh, when we are looking at these massive crowds there, the record for the maximum number of people watching a cricket test match was with MCG 1960. Do we see that record being broken today?
Well, Gaurav, I very well see that this is going to happen today, because you can see the number of people are continuously coming, because what I believe that by 8:30 all the people will be in. But right now, if you see in the visuals over here, there are the opening steps of the ground. Just look at the visuals over here. Have you ever seen so much of crowd who are coming actually to watch a test match? This is the fever of this particular match, and the excitement to see the very own Prime Minister Narendra Modi, because there is a different connection which Prime Minister Narendra Modi shares with the state of the people of Gujarat. And here you can see how the people are actually thronging inside this particular statement. And this stadium looks to be completely jam-packed. And I believe, Gaurav, this time the world record will be broken, and this is clearly visible. Here you can see the mounted horse battalion of the Gujarat Police Force also present over here. So you are seeing different colors over here, Gaurav, and I am telling again that this is the electrifying situation outside the ground. Just imagine what is going to happen inside the ground.
Okay. Oh, absolutely. We were there covering Namaste Trump. Same cricket ground. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi received the American President Donald Trump, and you had more than 1 lakh people there, the place was jam-packed, jam-packed. We were covering this on ground, and the American media was very excited that time. This time it's the Australian media that appears to be equally excited about this world record being broken.
Well, that's right. Gaurav, what I would love to know from Saurav, who's reporting live from Ground Zero, that is the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad, that, you know, the number of people coming in, he's been having a word with them. I want to know who's the showstopper tonight for them. Have they all come to watch Prime Minister Narendra Modi, or are they still really excited about watching a Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma, maybe a Steve Smith? Who's the showstopper for tonight, Saurabh?
Well, Nikhil, let me tell you that most of the people I'm talking to, most of them actually are saying that they are here to watch Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and this is the bond which Prime Minister Narendra Modi shares with the people of Gujarat. We'll speak to people who are coming over here, and I'll ask my camera person to come this side so we can speak to people over here. कितने एक्साइटेड हो आज के मैच के लिए? कितने एक्साइटेड हो?
बहुत ही एक्साइटेड है।
किसको देखना है?
विके को
किसको देखना है?
मोदी साहब को।
मोदी
यस यस क्रिकेट इंडिया विन और मोदी जी को खास मोदी जी को
मोदी जिंदाबाद।
मोदी साहब
मोदी साहब
उना से
बरोबर
आप किसको देखना है?
मैं देखने आया हूँ नेथन लायन को।
इंडियन क्रिकेटर को नहीं देखना?
इंडियन क्रिकेट को देखने
विराट कोहली
रविंद्र जाडेजा, अक्षर पटेल, गुजरात
और जडेजा
अक्षर
पटेल किसको देखने आए हो?
हाँ सूरत गुजरात से आया है।
कौन आपका फेवरेट है?
यहाँ पुनेश भाई मोदी
भाई मोदी। See the excitement level. It's tough to take a call, but yes, there is people that who are saying that they are here to watch Prime Minister Narendra Modi and both the Indian cricket team as well. So this is the excitement level over here. You can see that electrifying. Kisko? They are continuously saying Modi, Modi and Modi. So it's a very excitement and electrifying atmosphere here. In the visuals you can clearly see that people are still coming in inside this particular ground, and this stadium is going to be completely packed over here, and people are still coming inside. Back to you, Gaurav.
I'll have to say, Gaurav, that even as a cricket fan, I would love cricketers to be given prominence. But I have to say that right now, Mr. Modi is edging out all the cricketers. There are more fans of Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the stadium. I'm just so happy to see there were a few, 2 or 3, who said that they've come to watch the cricket as well.
Well, one said Virat Kohli, so the VK ko dekhna hai. Gujarati players, of course, very
Akshar
high.
Patel.
Akshar Patel, very
Ravindra
high
Jadeja.
on their agenda. But you know, when the two prime ministers go out, and we are told Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he'll be doing the toss for this. Is that how it actually happens with VVIPs?
Well, normally not. And I'm not sure it's going to happen today because normally there's a strict protocol about a test match. Only the match referee goes with the captains to the toss. Maybe there's a departure today. We really don't know.
So that's the buzz on ground, and that's the buzz on ground. That doesn't usually happen.
No, it hasn't happened.
It's possible, Gaurav, that what might happen is the two Prime Minister may be present at the toss, but the coin toss will be done by either of the two captains. It's usually the home captain who does that. So
and maybe the customary handshake with both teams before they go out to play.
And then the lap on on the chariot there.
Yes.
Right.
But you know, Mr. Mathur is very lucky. I've always been very envious of him because he's gone on real historic tours. You're talking about cricket diplomacy, and I think two tours that really come to my mind, and I'll start with the first one. First time, you know, Australia came from apartheid. They came here and played in India. But when the first time they traveled in '92, the Indian team traveled to South Africa. That was a major tour. That was the first visiting team to come to South Africa after their hiatus because of apartheid ended. And Mr. Amrit Mathur was on that tour. So I'd love to know from you, sir, how important was that tour and how does cricket diplomacy really work? And I think you had a chance to meet the man himself, Nelson Mandela, at the time.
Yeah, Nikhil, those were strange times. This was 1992. Apartheid was just about breaking down. There were changes happening. And India and South Africa did not recognize each other in terms of relations.
Yes.
So our passports used to be stamped, not valid for Israel and South Africa. So that's the political context of the tour. Also, as South Africa was out of international cricket, nobody knew what to expect there. In fact, we didn't even know the players, forget conditions, pitches, stadiums, etc. We couldn't even sort of put a finger on the 11 players we'd be playing against. So there's complete lack of intelligence or any information, and this was a political background that, you know, they were going through a great political churn, things were happening. We went there knowing nothing. And it was so strange that we went as a team of 14, I was the manager, and we had one person as support staff. Nowadays, the Indian team travels in a group of 40. So there are 15 players, there are net bowlers, there are 15 support staff doing everything.
The common joke is that the support staff is slightly
Exceeds.
more than the team itself.
Yeah, but that's how the game has evolved, and that's
Yes.
what India does, that's what every international team does. But I'm talking of way back in '92 when it was very different. We landed there, and even the playing conditions were not sorted. It was left to me, Azhar, the captain, Mr. Wadekar was the coach, and Ravi, to go and talk to the South African board and decide playing conditions. Can you imagine this happening today? So those are strange times. But as Nikhil mentioned, we were all aware of Mr. Mandela's presence, and we'd all known about him, his role in the political changes that were taking place. He'd just been released from jail after 27 years.
Yeah.
So first we went and met him officially in Johannesburg. He was very kind, very gracious. He spent time. I think the team presented him a badge signed by everybody. We really didn't know what to give him. You know, when you go to meet somebody like him, what is it that you can take? So we just went there. He spent time with us. He was very kind and very gracious. And you could realize the awe and the aura that you experienced in his presence. After a few days, he came to watch a game also. And he spent about 45 minutes to an hour watching a game at the Wanderers. And he made the usual polite inquiries about players, who's what. But the takeaway is that you realize that here was a man who was genuinely special.
Yeah.
And you felt privileged to be in his company for all that he stood for.
Fascinating.
That
Actually
was
fascinating.
Yep, that was an incredible tour. I spoke to a lot of players who had traveled during that 92 tours, and they said that, you know, South Africa laid out the red carpet, as in terms of just the cricket fans. They would just shower all their love because they were just so happy that the visiting team had come.
That apartheid had ended.
Yes.
Because of apartheid, that their apartheid had also ended.
Yes, and that they were traveling. And cricket was
Now when we talk about India-Australia, when we talk about the match that's going on here, what would the players be thinking with the two prime ministers there?
I think their focus is going to be on the series. Firstly, the two prime minister, and no matter how much the players say that no pressure, you are going to feel a bit of pressure. You know, your prime minister is there, he'd be watching the first day of the test match. If I were a batsman walking out and the prime minister is sitting in the stand, you'd be, you anyway nervous, but you'd be slightly more nervous. That's the first thing. But I think once you get into the groove, I think it's about like 4 or 5 balls that you play. I think then it's just normal service that resumes. Then your focus is on 5-day cricket. Now, I know, again, the common running joke is that there are no 5... Yeah, exactly.
3 days.
There are no 5-day test matches, 2.5. But I tell you what, one major impact that because the two prime ministers are here, one major impact it's going to have on the cricketing sense of this series is that because you've had pitches which have been turning from day one, now that you've got Prime Minister Modi sitting there, you've got Anthony Albanese there, I think you are not going to have that rank turner from day one. You're not going to have a pitch where the ball pitches. Last time around, the indoor test match, the 5th ball of the test match, you could see a puff of dust come. That's definitely not going to be there because you want to have a sporting pitch. You also want to see some runs being scored. You say it's an even contest between bat and ball, but let me tell you, majority of those people that were walking in, yes, they have their favorite bowlers, and one of them mentioned Nathan Lyon, but 9 out of 10 have just come to either watch Virat Kohli get a lot of runs, Rohit Sharma get a lot of runs, even the opposition batting in a Manas Labuschagne or a Steve Smith get runs. So you need a lot of runs, which I think the first day or first 2 days, you're going to have a good batting pitch, which we haven't seen in the series so far, and I'm going to thank the two Prime Ministers for that. Yes.
Listen, I'm sure the people who come to watch, and the 100,000, whatever, they want India to win.
Yes.
They want Virat Kohli to make runs. They want Rohit Sharma to make runs, Jadeja to do well. They want India to do well, even if it's a 2-day game. They don't care. India must win. The other point made was about whether players are aware of the importance and there's added pressure because of the Prime Minister. Well, I think they're aware. Maybe there's a bit of pressure, but once you walk out and you take guard and you're in the field, I think everything else, you just shut yourself from everything else. Just to tell you what Mr. Gavaskar used to say, that he said, I never looked at the scoreboard while I was playing. So I was so much in my own zone and so focused on my own batting in cricket that nothing else mattered. The crowd didn't matter, people shouting, screaming, the short leg fielders trying to sledge him didn't matter. So people stopped sledging him anyway because it didn't make a difference. But his was an extreme form of concentration, so much that he said, I never looked at the scoreboard. I didn't know whether it was 96 or 99.
Yeah.
So maybe they're so much into that zone that they, as professional sportsmen, have to shut out everything and just concentrate on the job they're supposed to do.
But Mr. Gavaskar is you know, as he talks about his concentration, he would often tell me that once his box guard went in, then he would shut out all the noise. So even if he was asked after that to be speaking to or shaking hands with the Prime Minister, he wouldn't be very keen because his concentration started from that dressing room. Once his box guard was in, he said, then my focus is there. So any sort of protocols that you have to follow, Prime Ministers that you have to meet, he said, needed to be done before that. Once I'm in my zone to open, then I'm...
Nikhil, I think it's wrong to quote Mr. Gavaskar as an example of something.
Yes.
He's special, he's unique. What worked for him maybe wouldn't work for anybody else, and what he did others couldn't do. So let's not quote Gavaskar as an example of focus or concentration. True. He was something different.
Tell me, you spoke about that one tour to South Africa, which was very important diplomatically as well for India as such, and Indian cricket, South African cricket. The other very important tour, and we're talking to you about pressure. There couldn't have been more pressure to that tour to Pakistan, 2004. You traveled with the team at that time. That, talk about a high pressure tour.
Listen, it was high pressure before the tour started. There were doubts whether the tour should happen, and because there were security concerns, etc. So a small team of 3 people, one of them being me, we went on a recce to Pakistan before the tour to look at the security. So we actually traveled everywhere, Lahore, Pindi, Peshawar, Multan, Gujranwala, wherever. And the Pakistan government assured us at the highest level that everything will be done. Whatever you want, give us a wish list, it will be executed. So there was a lot of hype and uncertainty before the tour. But once we went there, it was entirely different. There was warmth, they were very welcoming, and things just worked out perfectly on the tour.
In fact, what's extremely exciting today is the fact that we have both Alan Border and Sunil Gavaskar with us. You've spoken to both of them.
Yes.
And this is the Alan Border Sunil Gavaskar trophy that we're talking about. The 4th test match starts today. India has a slight edge. India does have an edge.
Well, they do. I mean, because if you take a look at the record at the Narendra Modi Stadium, India has a very good record. Gaurav mentioned at the start of our broadcast today that the 2 test matches that have technically been played at the Narendra Modi Stadium, not the erstwhile Motera that we're talking about, at the Narendra Modi Stadium, India won both those test matches. Those games came against a very strong English team. Now you're playing an Australian team, and I think there's more context this time around because the series is at 2-1. That time also, when you travel to Ahmedabad in that India-England series that happened in 2021, you were tied at 1-1. This time India are leading. I think what will give a lot of relief to the Indian team is the fact that they've already retained the Border Gavaskar trophy. That is on the basis of the fact that when India traveled to Australia, they won their series. So even if this series was to finish 2-2, because India were the incumbent, they were the holders of this trophy, the trophy remains here in India. And that's the dominance that India have had so far when it comes to India versus Australia rivalry in the last few few years, certainly. Before that, you could argue, yes, Australia probably for close to 2 decades were the better team, in fact, the best team on the globe. But now you could see that balance of power gradually shifting. And what special treat that we've got for you on India today, as Gaurav was mentioning, because it is the Border Gavaskar Trophy, what you're getting exclusively here on India today is Border and Gavaskar. Two gentlemen that captain their team with a lot of distinction. Also remember, the other thing that binds the two of them is the fact that Mr. Gavaskar was the first one to scale 10K, that is 10,000 runs in Test cricket. And guess who followed him there? The gentleman who you can see next to him, Alan Border. And that's where this trophy is named. Remember, this trophy was called the Border Gavaskar Trophy from 1996.
Okay, so these are live images that we are getting to you of Prime Minister Narendra Modi arriving at the Narendra Modi Stadium. Tremendous excitement as Saurav Aktania, a colleague from Ground Zero, was reporting live images from the stadium. The Prime Minister being received by the Chief Minister, Bhupendra Patel, the Home Minister of the state, the young Home Minister, also Jai Shah, receiving the Prime Minister, officials of the BCCI. And this is where cricket diplomacy now takes over. Extremely interesting, the fact that even in Australia, there's tremendous excitement about this Test series and what the Australian Prime Minister would be able to achieve in this visit. 4-day-long visit, 3 legs to it. Landed in Ahmedabad, would be traveling to Mumbai. Then, of course, the summit is in the national capital. But before that, the Australian Prime Minister said this trip demonstrates the commitment to deepen links between India and Australia and to being a force for stability and growth in our region. That, again, is extremely critical. Two democracies, India and Australia. Economic partnership is something they're looking forward to. Strategic partnership is something that India and Australia hope to deepen. The Quad foreign ministers have just met. Trade remains extremely high on agenda, as do educational ties, cultural ties, people-to-people ties. All of that would be taken up. Green energy boost. Again, India set very ambitious target. By 2030, 50% energy would be renewable, 30% of automobiles on the roads would be fueled by solar power. That is where Australia is a big part, and India hopes to acquire not just technology, but a lot more in this. And this is where this relationship, Mr. Mathur, becomes extremely critical. It's not just linked on any one aspect. Two democracies moving forward on a multi-pronged, way.
Yeah, I think there are lots of common interests between India and Australia, culturally, trade-wise, people-to-people contact, education. You mentioned so many fields. So there is a subtext to the cricket. There's cricket, but in the background, important national issues are also going to get, progressed.
And there we have images of the Prime Minister arriving at the Narendra Modi Stadium.
Who you see right now is former India cricketer, World Cup winner Roger Binney, now the president of the BCCI is meeting him. Then you have the secretary of the BCCI, Jai Shah. Both of them meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi right outside the stadium and then escorting him inside where a program is planned. We know that there is going to be a chariot that will take the two prime ministers on a tour of the stadium, and you'll have about more than 100,000 people at least. That is the kind of impression that we've got in terms of the crowds that we've seen outside the stadium. Right now, the stadium is packed. It's also going to be a big occasion because you might just break the record for most number of people actually coming to watch a test match. And as I said, it's a double treat for everyone who's coming in because you have a lot of star cricketers to witness today, some good cricket, but you're also getting to see the Prime Minister of the two countries that are here actually discussing a lot of collaboration, a lot of cooperation between the two countries, whether it's on the defense front, whether it's on the economical front, and of course cricketing ties.
The Australian Prime Minister also said, today I'm bringing a delegation of ministers and business leaders to India. Australia and India have a rich friendship which is underpinned by common interests, shared democratic values, the bonds between our people, and extremely interesting, Nikhil, an affectionate but fierce sporting rivalry.
Well, that's been the hallmark, actually. He summed it up really well, Gaurav, when it comes to the rivalry between India and Australia. Yes, great relations off the field, and now, as we've been talking about, this has gradually become the marquee cricket series in the world. Yes, if you look at history, you'll talk about the Ashes, you'll talk about India versus Pakistan, but you don't get to see a lot of it now. So in terms of the cricketing competition, in terms of the rivalry that you get to see between these two countries, I think this is the marquee series around the globe. And I'm not just talking about Indian cricket fans, Australian cricket fans. If you were to travel around the cricketing world, most people will tell you that they have their eyes glued when India and Australia are playing a series, whether that series takes place in Australia, whether it's in India. And I think the contest that we've seen between these two countries, Gaurav, you'd remember Steve Waugh, he dominated the world but was unable to win in India, and that's why he called this his final frontier. They came very close in 2001, and then you had arguably the greatest test match ever played at the Eden Gardens. We all remember that partnership between VVS Lakshman and Rahul Dravid. From there on, not only did India claw their way back into the series, they went ahead and won the Chennai test match. So you've got contests that are for the ages that you'll remember for years because of that close rivalry, and then multiple contests that you've had in Australia. I mean, 2008 series, we all remember because of that infamous monkey gate, but what that added to was a lot of cricketing excitement. You had that major controversy in Sydney, but from there on you go to Perth and India come out fighting and win that series. You know, all this while, Gaurav, one thing that you attributed to the Australian was their fighting spirit. You know, you think that they're down and out and they'll find a way to claw their way back into the series. You know, tables have turned. It's the Indian cricket team, if you take a look at the last few series, it's India that has done that. Whether that 2008 series I was talking to you about, whether it was the last series, again, arguably the greatest probably series that the two countries have played, where India were all out for 36, you know, but they wore it as a badge of honor, that dubious score of 36 in Adelaide. From there on, came back fighting in the test matches thereafter. We all remember the performance that they gave in the Sydney test match to draw it and then win that Gabba test match, which was a fortress of Australia. So if I was to, look back at the last few series and make a film out of it, I can guarantee you it's going to be a box office hit, because no film writer can write a better script than what we've seen between India and Australia in test match cricket recently.
And we're seeing another script being written right in front of our eyes. This is history being made when it comes to India-Australia relationship being taken to the next level. We're saying this in India, they're saying this down under. In Australia, tremendous excitement about this relationship. Australia's acting Prime Minister on the floor of the House said that when Australia talks about its closest friends, India is right up there, especially when it comes to the strategic partnership. I once again want to cut across to Saurabh Aktania joining us from Ground Zero. Saurabh, 8:30 was the cutoff time, but have more than 1 lakh people been able to get inside the stadium, or are they still trickling in even though the Prime Minister has arrived?
Well, Gaurav, let me tell you, I can hardly hear you because there is so much noise outside the stadium over here. Just look at the people, and I just hear that you said something about record, but I believe that this time the records are going to be broken, because I'm seeing that people in huge number continuously coming. Look at the area over, that's the stadium over, that's the metro station, that's the Sabarmati metro station from wherein all the visitors are come here. We'll ask them, किसके लिए थे, किसके आए हो, किसको बजरंग बली इंडिया 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 में कौन सो इंडिया जीते इंडिया 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 कौन फेवरेट इंडिया इंडिया कोहली कोहली विराट कोहली excitement over here. People are continuously coming over here. That's the gate number 2 of Narendra Modi Stadium over here. And let me tell you, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived. I saw in the visual that Gujarat governor was present there, along with Gujarat Chief Minister and the Gujarat Home Minister also. Jai Shah was present. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was welcomed at the gate of Narendra Modi Stadium. Both the teams have already arrived over here. We have been told that sometime from now, the event will actually start. They will be celebrating the 75 years of cricket friendship between both the countries. Australian PM Anthony Albanese yesterday arrived at Ahmedabad, and later on he first went to Gandhi Ashram. Gandhi Ashram, such an important holy place in Gujarat, and all the important dignitaries actually visit Gandhi Ashram. From there, PM Anthony Albanese went to Governor House, wherein he played Holi, and you can see the delightful pictures coming in from that Holi celebration. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reached Governor House yesterday late night, and today both the PM are going to watch match together. That's the fourth and final test match, a very important test match of Border Gavaskar series. And here you can see, Gaurav, what an electrifying atmosphere here. Continuously people are coming into this particular ground, and police are also trying it very hard to manage this particular crowd. So the situation right now outside the ground is such that police are continuously trying to ask people that they, as soon as possible, that they get into the ground as soon as possible. We are joined by a very senior officer over here. Mr. Agarwal sir, how are the security arrangements over here? What has been done?
Yes, today in the Narendra Modi Stadium we have a very important cricket match. Along with that we have the Honorable Prime Minister of India and the Honorable Prime Minister of Australia having a summit meet also. We have more than 5,000 policemen deployed over in this duty. 2,500 are on the roads managing the traffic so that people don't get inconvenience. As you can see, we have a lot of fans coming in since 4 o'clock in the morning today. We have a newly inaugurated Ahmedabad metro also, so a lot of people are also making use of this metro to reach the stadium.
It's very difficult to manage the whole crowd, and you're seeing from morning 4 people are actually coming to the ground.
Yes, the enthusiasm for cricket in this country is huge. Moreover, it's going to be an interesting match. Considering the status of the Border Gavaskar trophy, I just wish that may the best team win and may that team be India.
Thank you so much for talking to India Today. So he is here saying that from morning 4 a.m. people are actually coming to this particular ground. They have made a very tight security arrangement. Over 5,000 people are actually deployed over here. Look at the fan over here. They are still outside cheering for Team India, and we'll speak to him also. कौन सा प्लेयर सबसे फेवरेट है?
मैं पूरी टीम को चेयरअप करता हूँ। हर इंडिया की जितनी भी मैच नरेंद्र मोदी स्टेडियम में होती है, और मैं हर मैच को और पूरे स्पोर्ट को भी मैं चेयरअप करता हूँ।
पक्का इंडिया
100%। मैं दिल्ली भी गया था, वहाँ पर भी इंडिया सेकंड टेस्ट मैच इंडिया जीती थी, और यहाँ पर भी इंडिया जीतेगा। और नरेंद्र मोदी, बड़ी खुशी की बात है, नरेंद्र मोदी जी भी आए हुए हैं यहाँ पर।
काफी एक्साइटमेंट आज किसको, टीम इंडिया के लिए चेयरअप की प्राइम मिनिस्टर नरेंद्र मोदी के लिए?
मोदी 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 मोदी।
Here you can see situation outside the ground, Gaurav, and many of them, actually I must say that many of them actually over here excited to watch Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is actually first time will be watching a cricket match inside the Narendra Modi Stadium. That's at the steps of the ground. Here you can still see the endless crowd just trying to get inside this particular stadium. The time and again announcement also made that very soon the event inside the ground will start. But let me tell you, there are so many people still who are trying to get in. So it is going to be a difficult task for police as well, because there is 3 layers of frisking which is happening. Several things are not allowed to take in. So after that frisking only, people will be allowed to go inside. So there are a lot of people still coming in. I guess that the event will start and people will still keep going inside the ground.
They hope to break the record of the Melbourne cricket ground, and that looks as if it is happening, Nikhil. Also joining us on the broadcast is our consultant editor, Rajdeep Sardesai. Rajdeep, cricket, diplomacy, a bit of both, or a bit of Bharat ka tadka? Holi continues even a day after Holi, Rajdeep.
You know, there are different ways to look at what is happening in Ahmedabad today, Gaurav. There's, of course, the cricket, and it's a big cricket match because India would like to win this to be assured of their place in the World Test Championship final that takes place in June. There's the Border Gavaskar Trophy, which, of course, India retains because Australia can't win the series. But apart from the cricket, I think there is a bit of diplomacy, there's a bit of the projection of Prime Minister Modi. Because it is the Narendra Modi Stadium, it is the biggest stadium in the world. It's likely to hold the World Cup final in November this year. And it's an opportunity in a way for the Prime Minister to showcase the one thing that brings India and Australia the closest together, which is cricket. So there is the cricket diplomacy, there's the projection of the personality of the Prime Minister, and there is a cricket match to be won or lost. The fact that India lost in Indore makes it a little bit more exciting and interesting, because Australia does have a chance now to level the series. So I think and also look at it, Gaurav, in the context of all the events that have been held in the last few months around G20. So clearly India packaging itself to the world, the Prime Minister packaging himself to the wider world. And what better way to do that than cricket at a stadium which is named after Prime Minister Modi himself?
This is packaging of India in a big way, because Australia sounds equally excited about the visit of the Prime Minister, cooperation in energy security, comprehensive relationship being taken to the next level. Renewable energy is an area, Rajdeep, where they hope to cooperate even more. And what better way to do it when both the countries are watching the match coming closer, as the two governments also hope to come closer, Rajdeep?
You know, it's very interesting, Gaurav. There were almost 2 decades in which an Indian Prime Minister had not been to Australia. And Australian Prime Ministers also came very infrequently to India. This was particularly right through the 1990s and the first decade of the 2000s. But what you've seen in recent times is a strengthening of relationship. The two countries are part of Quad. The two countries have an increasing commercial interest in that is building up. For the longest time, Australia was a country that was caught up in what is called the tyranny of distance. Somehow the land down under wasn't top of the mind. I think all of that has changed. Cricket has had a lot to do with it. I mean, Australian cricketers, again, interestingly, never came to India we used to come to India once in a decade. And some of the best cricketers wouldn't even come to India in the 1970s. All that also has changed, because India is the superpower of cricket. So India's arrival on the world stage through cricket is one way of countries like Australia embracing India, quite apart from the commercial and the strategic aspects that we're now looking at. So I think in that sense, Australia has become an important partner for India. It's a competitor on the cricket field. You're watching the two best teams in the world, who are likely also to play the World Test Championship final in England in June. And really, India, Australia is what one time was, say, West Indies versus Australia. We are now the two best cricket teams in the world, and every time we play each other, there's always a lot of excitement around the cricket. And I think the prime ministers of the two countries are hoping to catch on
for a
to that
moment,
excitement.
we're just cutting across to the Narendra Modi Stadium, and these are live images, the two prime ministers on that special stage. 75 years of friendship through cricket, that's being celebrated. Let's for a moment dip in.
Were created with players of India and Australia Test cricket over the past 75 years. I now request the Honorary Secretary of the BCCI, Mr. Jay Shah, to felicitate our Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, with a framed artwork. I now request Mr. Jay Shah to felicitate our Honorable Prime Minister. And it's a framed artwork representing 75 years of friendship through cricket. Thank you. To continue the the celebrations, I would like to introduce a very special performer. Grammy Award-winning, internationally recognized Indian artist who was named one of the 20 most influential global Indian women by the Economic Times of India. She's also a long-standing ambassador of Indian music for the legendary Carnegie Hall in New York City. Joining us all the way from the United States of America today, she will be performing a unique composition called the Unity of Symphony that she has specially curated to celebrate this magnificent occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Follow.
Jam your calling.
Anthony Ben for that fantastic performance that represents this wonderful friendship through cricket between India and Australia. I now humbly request the Honourable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, and the Honourable Prime Minister of Australia, Mr. Anthony Albanese, to do us the honours and hand over the test caps to the team captains. Steve Smith will collect the cap from the Honourable Prime Minister of Australia, Mr. Anthony Albanese. And Rohit Sharma, likewise, will get his cap from the Honourable Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi ji. Captains, I'd now like to request the two honourable Prime Ministers to do the lap of honour. And that will be around this magnificent stadium in front of a huge crowd. Because cricket today is a religion that binds the people of all nations. Gavaskar Trophy has been one of the highest impact and dominant duels in the world of cricket. But today we are here to celebrate something even more special, as the two honourable Prime Ministers do the lap of honour. And what's special, it's 75 years of friendship through cricket. Over the years, there have been so many instances where a compelling one-on-one exchange between the players has not changed the complexion of an India-Australia match, but also kept the viewers at the edge of their seats. It's the Test cricket that's been played between the two nations over the last 5 or 6 decades that has got this India-Australia series top billing. Not just in their respective countries, but around the globe. The plethora of characters that both sides bring to the cricket field make it a fascinating mix of players, and is always enjoyable to watch for a cricket lover. Cricket between India and Australia started way back in 1948 and is rich in history. respective countries and in either countries. What a sight as the Honourable Prime Ministers do the lap of honour in the biggest stadium in world cricket. And you've got a fabulous crowd as early as this to watch something historic, something fabulous. And it's a tribute to the players over the years of both the teams. Cricket the way they have. What's paramount is they played it in the spirit of the game. Well, it's a fabulous lap of honor. Soon as we begin the cricket proceedings, I will now request the Honourable Prime Minister of India, Sri Narendra Modi ji, and Honourable Prime Minister of Australia, Mr. Anthony Albanese, to join me as we inaugurate the first ever Friendship Hall of Fame.
Test match played in the presence of two prime ministers between our nations that have had such an intense rivalry on the cricket field, but growing collaboration of it, and may it always be that way. There's a specially minted coin today celebrating 75 years of Indo-Australian friendship through cricket. It's given us some great cricket over the years and will continue to do so. That coin is in the hands of was in the hands of Chris Broad, now in the hands of the home captain Rohit Sharma. Steve Smith still captain of Australia. Rohit, your call. Heads is the call from Steve. It is a heads team. You won the toss, and you're going to.
We're going to have a bat.
And your side for today, Steve?
Same team.
The surface looks a bit different. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it does. It looks like a nice surface. Yeah, it's hard to say until we get out on the middle, but yeah, it does look like a good wicket.
And you're still happy playing three spinners? It's a different approach for the Australian side?
Yeah, it is. You know, I think the guys have performed really well last week. You know, I still think this wicket will take spin as the game goes on. So, yeah, we'll see how we go.
You said it could be your last test in Australia, in India. Surely you're not serious?
I don't know. I'm getting older, so it's 4 years away. It's a long time. We'll wait and see.
Go well, Steve.
Thank you. Cheers.
Right, Rohit Sharma alongside me. You might have batted first too, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we would have. But I guess we know what we're doing now. We've got to come out and do that well.
And your side for today?
Yeah, we've made one change. Siraj has been rested, and we've brought back Shami.
Now, there's been a long time between the end of the last test match and the start of this one. Is that good? Does it allow you to forget what happened? Does it? How does that work for you?
Yeah, no, I think it's always nice to have some time off, understand what we did right, what we did wrong, just to regroup, you know, as a team. Always nice to have that time off. You can reflect on so many things as well. But yeah, we prepared really well for this one. Hopefully, we can get what we want here.
And your take on the surface you're playing on today?
Yeah, I mean, not the surface what we saw in the first three test matches. It looks like a very good pitch. I don't know when it's going to start turning, but yeah, looks a good pitch. Obviously, I hope it stays like that for all 5 days.
Because you're going to bat second, of course. So well done, Rohit. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Right, there you are then. The Australian captain, Steve Smith, has won the toss on this momentous occasion. Australia will bat first. In
this series, there was a gentleman from Baroda who was playing for Baroda in the Ranji Trophy. He got 100 in each innings, Mr. Vijay Hazare. You know, on consecutive days in Adelaide, he got 100. Of course, Jasu Patel comes from this state with 9 against Australia. Richie Beno's team. You've got Tiger Pataudi, Dean Jones,
Dean Jones being taken, he was on a drip.
Yes, in the tight test.
Heat. It was,
yeah, and Steve Waugh. As you come across, 75 years is a long time. It's great. Greatest. And you see from the other side, you'll see all the players who graced the two teams in that span of time. Some terrific players. And the great thing is, as competitive as cricket has been, it's been played in the spirit of the game.
Yes.
Absolutely.
This current series.
See, this side you see all the cricketers. The David Boones, Alan Gordon. And this is the turn of the century.
So well done.
In the 21st century, all these players, Travis, Pontings, Kohli.
So Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, they're together watching those pictures of friendship, of matches played by Indian players, Australian players, 75 years of friendship, India and Australia. And Nikhil, amazing, the first match played between India and Australia when India, soon after independence, toured down under in 1947. And then, as Sunil Gavaskar was telling us, 20 years later in 1967.
Yes, imagine what an incredible tour that was, because guess who was the captain of the Australian cricket team at the time?
Don Bradman.
Yes, arguably the greatest cricketer to have ever played the sport. Don Bradman was captain of Australia. I think Vijay Merchant was India's designated captain, but then Lala Amarnath took over because of certain injury to Vijay Merchant at the time. But it had other legends in that team. As I mentioned, Lala Amarnath was there. Syed Mushtaq Ali, he pulled out of that tour last minute because of an injury, I believe. But from there on, the tours weren't that regular to Australia. And also, there was a big gulf between India and Australia. That tour, India went on to lose 4-0. I think they had one test match that had been drawn. Beyond that, the only victories that India managed to register at the time was against the touring teams or the touring matches that they played. But see how far Indian cricket has come from that time. Now, the last two series that you've traveled to Australia, India have won both. And just as it is very tough to win test matches in India, it's equally tough to win test matches in Australia, especially for the Indian team because of the different conditions that are on offer and Indian players not accustomed to playing on such hard and bouncy track. But over the years, if you see, Indian cricket has evolved. They found a way to play in those tough Australian conditions, in fact found a way to beat Australia in Australia. So which is why now at the moment, as I said, it's the #1 rivalry, the marquee cricket series in international cricket at the moment, India-Australia. And what's really interesting is, Gaurav, because you keep talking about the value of test cricket or the interest in test cricket diminishing over the years. But if there's one series which always attracts a lot of eyeballs in test cricket, it is India versus Australia, simply because of the nature of the two teams, where they are in world cricket at the moment, and the kind of contest that these two teams have delivered. Here we're seeing Ravi Shastri, a former India captain, got a double 100 in Sydney in Australia, actually showing both the Prime Minister about all the legends. I can see some sketches there of Lala Amarnath, I can see at the moment, and all other captains. Ajit Wadekar is there. I think these are sketches of all former India captains over the years after that 1947 series that you talk about.
This is that hall of friendship, India-Australia cricket. The Australian Prime Minister perhaps has a point to make to Ravi Shastri, or that interesting discussion it appears from here. But Amrit Mathur, in your view, Australia has won the toss today.
Yeah.
Steve Smith elects to bat. Big challenge for India from this point on?
Well, I guess that's an advantage, Australia at the moment, because you would want to bat first. You don't know how badly the wicket may behave or how it may deteriorate. So it's best to make use of the wicket first up. So I think to that extent, Australia has done well today.
We got some sort of insight as to how the pitch is going to play, because we heard Steve Smith there talking about the surface. He seemed a relieved man, and I say that because up until now in the 3 test matches, the conditions have been completely foreign to them. The ball turning square from day one. Nagpur slightly better. It got progressively worse as the series went along until you reached Indore, the last test match, where it was almost impossible to play on those turning track. We heard from Alan Border a short while ago, where he said it eventually became a lottery as to, who's going to survive, and you really couldn't pick out one winner. He seemed a relieved man right now, Steve Smith, because the one thing that he mentioned at the toss was that this looks like a good surface. This looks like a batting surface. And I can tell you, we're all talking about India, Australia. We all want our respective countries to win.
Yeah.
But what we're forgetting at the moment, all the top batsmen have been woefully out of form. So what you want to really see is some sort of runs being scored. You want superstars to get runs. But whether it is Virat Kohli, whether it is Steve Smith, they haven't got 100. And these two batsmen not getting 100 in one series is unheard of. I know Virat Kohli has had a lean patch for some time, but you want to see a big 100 or a big knock from one of them, especially with so many people turning up at the stadium. And I think this is the pitch, this is the ground, these are the conditions where you're going to see 1 or 2 really impressive knocks in the series. You could see those images right now, Gaurav, of the 2 captains, the 2 prime ministers posing together, and these are images I can tell you we're going to use for years to come whenever we talk about India-Australia relations, especially India-Australia relations on the cricket field. Yes, sir.
Nikhil, you mentioned about past Indian cricketers making an impact in Australia. Not to forget Vijay Hazare, who made 200s on the 48th tour at Adelaide. After that, Pataudi in 67, I think, played 2 fantastic innings in Melbourne when he was unfit, had a bad groin, could barely move. After that, Mr. Gavaskar scored tons of runs all over the world, also Australia. Kapil Dev and our famous test win. Then Virat Kohli's many hundreds, and obviously Lakshman, who's the #1 star as far as Australia is concerned. He's so loved there.
You talk about Tiger Pataudi, on that tour, 67. He left a major impression there, and I heard this story from Ian Chappell. He said, first time I saw royalty, he said every time I would see him come out to, bat, there would be a rain delay or the break for lunch. He said, I would see Tiger Pataudi come out, and he was narrating this story saying, I would see him come with a new bat. And he's like to be amazed, because we would carry like 1 bat or so for the entire tour. And here's Tiger Pataudi after every break coming out with a new bat. So he said, I went up to Tiger. I said, Tiger, every time you come out, you've got a brand new bat with you. He said, you know what Tiger told me? He said, it's not just my bat which is new, Ian. My shirt is new. The trouser I'm wearing is absolutely new. Even my undergarments that I wear for every time I come out are new. He said, that was my first, brush with royalty on the cricket field. So such memories, of India, Australia.
What would the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's memories be? When he's on a chariot here, he's like royalty right now.
Well, I'm sure he hasn't experienced such celebration at a sporting event in Australia, because firstly, it's not often that you have such a large crowd, and I'm sure he's not used to this pageantry and this grandeur and this celebration at a cricket ground. Must be a really unique experience for him too.
A unique experience that they actually have been talking about very extensively, even in the Australian media and in the Australian Parliament. I have Ambassador Rajiv Dogra joining us on the broadcast. Ambassador Dogra, welcome on the show. When we look at all these spectacular images at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Gujarat, this relationship is about cricket, but this trip of the Australian Prime Minister with 2 other ministers and 30 top CEOs is about a lot more about Australia and India gaining from each other, Ambassador.
Well, we had never heard of diplomacy in Indo-Australian cricket. We had heard of diplomacy in Indo-Pakistan cricket. We had heard of ping-pong diplomacy between China and America. But this is a first between two cricketing nations that they are also trying diplomacy to convey a message that it is not just squad, there is also a bilateral side to the relationship, and that relationship can be cemented by displays like this at the Ahmedabad Stadium. This is really phenomenal because the stadium is huge, people are enthusiastic, and the two prime ministers took time off to spend almost an entire day watching their teams battle it out in the middle of the stadium. So for two friendly nations to be there, to be competing in the spirit of the game is just fantastic sight.
They're competing between the 22 yards, and this is fierce competition. But how close is the cooperation, and not just China specific? If we were to talk about India's energy requirement or energy needs, how close are the two countries there? When it comes to trade, are we seeing real movement forward, Ambassador?
Well, I would say that, from 18th century and 19th century, India had been importing coal and horses from Australia. But it was all a very meager contact because there are 8,000 plus kilometers separating the two countries. And it remained at that level despite the fact that the first diplomatic contacts between India and Australia started before our independence. In 1941, India established a trade representation in Sydney. Then in 1946, there was an exchange of high commissioners, of course, while we were still not independent. And from there on, we regarded each other across the oceans, but just with fading interest. There was nothing intense or warm about the relationship. But over the last few years, the picture has changed quite a lot. I would say that the scope of the relationship is now beginning to emerge because Indo-Australian trade, you would be surprised to note, is almost as much as India's trade with France. And we hear so much about France and our trade relationship with that, but very little about Indo-Australian trade, which has reached roughly around $28 billion. That is not insignificant. Of course, the trade is weighted in favor of Australia, but that is so in every relationship that one country or the other would have a slight advantage. In fact, Ahmedabad connection is also significant because the Adani enterprises, they have a huge mine in Australia which has started operations. So there are, and let's not forget, there's a human dimension also to Indo-Australian relationship. There are nearly 800,000 Indians living in Australia, and they are mostly professionals. Then there are about 70 to 80,000 students, Indian students, who study in Australian universities, and Australian universities are nothing to be sniffed at. I mean, they are some of the premier institutions. And to bring in the China connection, Gaurav, Chinese made it a point that they sent their scholars to some of the premier Australian institutions to get the best of the technology from there.
Yes.
So if China has advanced in some of the frontiers of technology, it is also thanks to Australia, besides USA and so on. So,
in fact, that's something that they're actually talking about.
Urging.
They're talking about, okay, these are live images once again. The two prime ministers shaking hands with the teammates. Prime Minister Narendra Modi with the Indian team, Anthony Albanese with the Australian team. And cricket, Mr. Mathur, has played a very critical role even in the past in taking this relationship forward.
Yeah, I think there is a very interesting fact that Dilip Singh ji, the legendary Indian cricketer, was our High Commissioner to Australia after he finished playing cricket. And he scored 100 on debut against Australia in England. And he retired at the age of 26. He must have been a phenomenal player, but had medical issues. Similarly, Tiger Pataudi's father, again playing for England, made 100 on debut against Australia. So we have a long connection of interesting cricket connection.
So the Prime Minister and Virat Kohli, they're shaking hands. And the players have a big smile on their faces interacting with the Prime Minister, Nikhil.
Right, these are moments that even the players will remember. I've spoken to a few players in the past. For example, the 1983 winning team, we keep talking about them winning the World Cup, but they all remember their meeting with the Prime Minister after they had won the World Cup. So these are moments that players tend to remember as well. Nice to see a few Australian fans have also turned up. We've seen a bunch of Australian fans that have been travelling across the country supporting their team. And as we've been mentioning here, this series now has become really important. That's why you see a bunch of Australian fans as a travelling party that have come to India to enjoy, which is arguably the best of the cricket that you get to witness. The national anthems of both teams are on right now, so we'll cut across to them.
And so to the cricket. India versus Australia. 75 years of friendship. It was to Australia that independent India first sent a cricket team out. November 1947, that first test.
What a feeling when 100,000 people sing the national anthem together. The atmosphere absolutely electrifying there. Prime Minister Narendra Modi now waving to that crowd. Majority of whom, at least the people our reporters spoke to on ground zero, when asked Nikhil who had they come to watch, they said
very shortly
the Prime Minister.
Well, that's true, Gaurav. The overwhelming majority did speak about how they've come to watch Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Of course, they must have this in mind that, it's a 5-day test match. We'll get to see a lot of test match. But the Prime Minister is only here for day one of this test match. In fact, just for another half an hour is what we've been reporting here on India Today. We saw the two Prime Ministers posing with the two captains, and then they shook hands with both the teams. As the team now getting ready to come onto the field, we must also remind you that both the Prime Ministers are going to be watching a bit of Test cricket as well. They may be discussing the finer details of the game, who their favourite players are, what is it that they'd like to see in both the teams. I believe there are also reports that we might get to hear the two of them do a bit of commentary, and that'd be a first-time experience, at least for me, and really looking forward to that.
It indeed would be. The two Prime Ministers sitting there watching the match, talking about diplomacy. 30 top CEOs there, Ambassador Dogra, their conversation about coal, LNG gas, lithium for India's battery manufacturing, all of that extremely interesting. You were talking about education, one of the universities being set up in India.
Having said that, for the first 3 matches, the teams had won the toss lost. So,
well, in fact, the reports are that 2 universities may be set up in Gujarat, but that remains to be seen. There are other forms of collaboration in the education field which are going ahead. But you mentioned about CEOs of Australian companies accompanying the Australian Prime Minister. In fact, that again is a big contrast from what cricket diplomacy we've been used to in the past. Zia flew down to watch a cricket match in 1987 because there was a huge Indian military exercise on the borders, and Pakistan was concerned that this may just be a prelude to Indian forces doing something which was not to their taste, not to Pakistan's taste. But here, instead of army marching towards the border or exercising near the border, we have people from Australia coming in and trying to find ways how to increase peace, prosperity between the 2 countries. So that's a refreshing change. And that's also a telling comment on what Prime Minister Modi told President Putin a few months back, that this is not the age of war. This is the age of marching towards prosperity. And one of the ways is when 2 prime ministers get together to watch a cricket match, but they will also talk about how to take the relationship forward.
You know, interesting you should mention Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his conversation with President Putin, because isn't that a niggle when it comes to India-Australia relationship, or India-America, India and Europe? They know India plays a big role in. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has a major influence on the Russian President Vladimir Putin. They want India to take a stronger stand, or are they now expecting India to take a stronger stand, nudging President Putin towards peace, sir?
It's a very long time since.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned this. In fact, there was another visit recently by the Italian Prime Minister. And in one of her statements, she said that Narendra Modi is one of the most admired leaders in the world. So you are right. The expectation from the West, principally the USA, is that somehow Mr. Modi's interventions or Mr. Modi's conversations on talks with President Putin may lead towards an early peace. In fact, some of the other leaders, including American leaders, have vocally expressed this sentiment. But there is a limit to diplomacy and there is a style to diplomacy. It will be unrealistic to expect that Mr. Modi will be able to hammer down the desire for peace on President Putin. That's not how it will work. It's just a gentle nudge that can be given. And President Putin himself is a very mature, very experienced leader. So there are dimensions to the issue that he must also be constrained by. So I think it will be unrealistic of the West and its leadership to expect that some of the troubles that Western actions have caused in this Ukraine situation will now be resolved quickly. They also have to take a step forward, just as they expect President Putin to take a step forward. And that is the time when Prime Minister Modi's push or nudge could work to the benefit of the no war constituency.
Interesting you should mention that because Mr. Mathur, perhaps as they're watching this match, some of the conversation could be Russia, Ukraine and the war there, and not the war between 22 yards. We're looking at these images of Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting the players, greeting the players a short while back. We'll also come to those live images, but now the match starts. So you have cricket on one side and diplomacy on the other, both happening simultaneously, Nikhil.
Well, that's true, Gaurav. My interest there mostly on the cricketing front, because soon you're going to see, or probably it's already started, the first delivery that is going to be bowled. India has made that one particular change to their playing 11, and I've got across to Mr. Mathur, who's still with us, a former bureaucrat as well as a cricket administrator, has been part of many an important tour that the Indian cricket team has taken previously. In terms of that one change, Mr. Mathur, that they've made, they've changed the fast bowler. Also an indication that probably this will be a better pitch to play on, simply because there were talks that, listen, if it's going to be a turning track, if it's going to be a bit of a lottery, and if you're not really using your two fast bowlers, rest one of them, just go in with one, like an Umesh Yadav, get an extra batsman in. But the Indian team hasn't done that. Is it a sign that this could be a true, that age-old test sort of pitch that we'll get to see here in Ahmedabad?
Yes, I think so. I think we expect a better wicket than, say, Indore or Nagpur. And on a wicket of that kind, I think Shami is a bigger threat. He's a more experienced bowler. Him being in the attack will pose more questions for the Australians. So I think it's the right decision, because Shami is your main bowler, new ball bowler at the moment.
You know, what I'd really be excited to see is how the two prime ministers react. Let's say if an Australian batsman was to hit a boundary, or India were to pick up a wicket, how is it that the two prime ministers are going to react? Because they'll be sitting next to each other, clearly watching each and every delivery that is going to be bowled there. But just go back in terms of the rivalry, Mr. Mathur, India versus Australia. I keep saying that it's the #1 cricket battle at the moment in world cricket. It's the marquee series. But what are the factors that have led to this being the #1 cricket series in the world?
I think quite a few. One is that India is a better test team, and the record is outstanding in the last 5-10 years. Don't forget, we've done exceptionally well in Australia. You mentioned previous series, the Monkey Gate series, the matches when India's won, Dravid made those double 100, we won at Adelaide, I think. Tendulkar's many exploits in Australia, Lakshman's contribution. So India is a very respected team in Australia, and especially after the 36 debacle, how we came back, and that outstanding performance by the Indian team. So the Australian crowd, which is discerning, cricket lovers, they look to India to produce good quality cricket, and we've done that over the years. Virat Kohli's made tons of runs in Australia, those 300s in a series, I guess. So that's one. Secondly, we are the top two teams. So wherever they play, whether Australia or in India, the expectations of a quality contest is always there. And that's why it's a marquee series. The sponsors are interested, the fans are interested, the broadcasters are keen that they play more often. So again, everything's set for a great contest today.
I've traveled to Australia a few times, and over the years, I've really seen how the outlook towards Indian cricket in particular has changed amongst the cricket-loving people of Australia. There were times that India would come, it would be a series, but they weren't expected to win in Australia. They'd, at best, you'd had a few fans just come up to watch a Sachin Tendulkar play. That was about it. Maybe later a VVS Lakshman or a Rahul Dravid. Today, they actually come, Virat Kohli probably is a bigger star in Australia than Steve Smith is. Is that a correct assessment of how the Australians view Indian cricketers has changed over the years?
Listen, there's been always a perception that for you to be respected, you must do well in England, you must do well in Australia. So that's an age-old way of measuring the ability and skills of a player. So what the Indians have done in Australia has been outstanding. I don't think anybody's done as well as Virat Kohli in terms of making those hundreds. Similarly, Tendulkar is an all-time great, Mr. Gavaskar, all-time great. So the Australian cricket fans and people respect that, and they have a special position for the Indian team. So, that's the change that has happened in the last 10-20 years.
How do you view the Indian fans now look at Australian teams? Is it all a culmination of what probably an Alan Border started, winning that World Cup here in '87? I believe there were 100,000 people at the time at Eden Gardens, most of them cheering the Australian team when they were up against the English team, because Australia were the underdogs. Believe it or not, at that time that was the case. And then from there on, the teams that probably Steve Waugh got here to Indian shores, Ricky Ponting, all of them have contributed to the kind of, love and admiration that Indians have towards Australian cricket.
Listen, we've always respected and loved the Australian team, because there have been a series of superstars. The team has been great. They've won test matches everywhere. They're a dominant test playing nation. So that's been our case. But recently, it's, at least in this series, we saw Australia playing not like Australia in the first two games. Yes. So that's why it was such a refreshing change that at Indore, they came back and showed the qualities they stood for, to fight back, not give up, overcome difficult conditions. So let's see what happens today. Maybe it's a great moment for them to make a statement, to win this game, and to say that they can win in India, which not many countries have been able to do.
The one special thing that we've also got for you on India today is Border Gavaskar. Remember, this is a trophy named after former Australian captain Alan Border, former India captain in Sunny Gavaskar, and this is something that we got exclusively for you here on India Today. Have the two legends after whom the trophy is named. That is Sunil Gavaskar, Alan Border. They joined us live on India Today as we were building up to this grand finale, the final test match of this series. The series is also evenly poised at the moment at 2-1. Remember, India won the first two test matches, after which you had a situation in Indore where Australia really fought back and then made it 2-1. Remember, Australia still have a chance of making this series a 2-2 draw, which will be a sort of victory for an Australian team, because even when they came in 2004, they won that series, but at best they got to win 2 test matches. So 2 test matches were usually enough to win a series in India. Not this time around, because that's how dominant the Indian team has been while playing in India, that they won the first 2 test matches. But a lot to play for the Australian side, a lot of pride to play for. We were speaking to Alan Border, Sunny Gavaskar earlier. They were talking about the relations between these two countries. Sunny Gavaskar pointed out the fact that the first ever tour that India took was to overseas tour that they took was to Australian shores when they went there in 47, 48. But from there on, there was a big gap of almost 20 years. Mr. Mathur, I'll come to you on that. Those days, touring Australia wasn't that common for the Indian team. But you reckon also one of the reasons why you get to see these two teams playing, and me as a cricket fan is definitely not complaining, is the economics of all of it. When these two teams play, the entire world have their eyes on it, so many eyeballs being attracted. So the commerce of cricket is also some way related to India versus Australia?
Absolutely. That's why you won't see many India-Zimbabwe series or an India-Bangladesh series. This is a marquee event. Everybody's interested, the broadcasters, sponsors, fans, administrators. So if you go only by commercial considerations, you could have India and Australia playing every year.
Yes.
But there has been an increase in the number of matches between us, and that's completely directly a result of economic commercial benefits that accrue to both countries, both Australia and India.
Interesting point you make, because isn't that the driver of relationships globally now, Ambassador Dogra, the commercial interest, in which is what India and Australia are also looking at, especially when they're thinking of delinking with China. That's equally important. Are both countries rightly moving in that direction, decoupled from China as much as possible?
Well, let me take your first point, Gaurav, about the importance of commercial relationship to two countries' ties. Look at the statement made by the President of France and the President of United States when Tata placed that huge aircraft order. I mean, this was unheard of, that presidents of those two big countries going ecstatic, virtually jumping with joy that 1 million jobs are going to be created in USA and a large number of jobs are going to be created in France because Tata placed 400 plus aircraft order. So commerce naturally is the driver today. Commerce is the one which bats for a country. So India is in a good position that its economy is expanding, its economy is sprinting forward. But at the same time, we also have to be realistic. Australia's trade with China is 33% of its global trade. Let me give you two figures. Australia's trade with China, two-way trade, is close to $300 billion. Australia exports about $178 billion worth of goods and imports about $130 billion worth of goods. In comparison, Australia's trade with USA is just about $30 billion. So Australian stakes with China are huge. So, even if it is apprehensive of China's intentions in Pacific Islands and Pacific nations, it cannot suddenly distance itself from its links with China. It is, of course...
Is that a genuine effort, the fact that China is militarizing all those small Pacific islands, some virtually at the doorstep of Australia? Some commentary in Australia seems to indicate that they're extremely apprehensive about China's intentions. But are India, Australia, democracies talking about decoupling, or is that just talk and not action on ground?
No, I wouldn't say it is only talk. I think it is the first step towards action on ground, which could take a lot of time. And I'll explain why. Because China or Chinese presence in Pacific and Indian Ocean, the entire Indo-Pacific area, is huge. It has expanded so much in the last few years in terms of its naval fleet, be it the ships, aircraft carriers, submarines and so on, that the world was caught with surprise. China today has more ships and submarines than America has. China has more submarines operating in Indian Ocean than India has. So both India and Australia, in fact, out of the Quad members, they are the two members who are most affected. Japan, of course, is also there, but Japan's worries are of a different nature, and Japan's worries are also from North Korea. So, but India and Australia have China as their principal worry. Here, we cannot sort of think in terms of competing with China in strength at the moment in the naval terms, but at least by cooperating with each other, consulting with each other and coordinating with each other, we can at least think of preventive steps, also things in terms of early warning of Chinese intentions. For example, what are the Chinese ships doing in Sri Lanka? There could be coordination there. So China is really the big worry for both the nations. As you very rightly said, China's operations or intentions in the Pacific Islands are really causing huge concern to Australia, as are Chinese attempts to influence Australian politics.
Yes, in fact, that is a cause for grave concern. We'll talk about that during the course of this broadcast. But these four countries operating together, it's almost like having 8 eyes on China simultaneously: Japan, Australia, United States and India. Do you see that becoming a bigger group? Or when you heard Penny Wong at the Raisina, Australian Foreign Minister, did you get the impression that it's still iffy? It's not like AUKUS, a military organization. That's where Prime Minister Albanese is now headed to the United States for that nuclear submarine. But as far as India, Australia are concerned, the focus is more commercial and less strategic, or equal?
Well, you brought in the issue of Quad also, and very rightly so, because America, Japan, along with India and Australia, have reason to be concerned, because America traditionally, in fact, if you recall, when Mao met Nixon, he sort of gave a free hand to America to operate and to have the dominant relationship in Southeast Asia. But that is changing now, because Mao also said that a time will come when America will have to get out of Pacific. So China feels that its time is now, and China has been working on it in terms of increasing its all-round relationship with the Southeast Asian nations, despite many problems and prickly issues. But on the other hand, Quad getting together is not in any way an offensive organization or offensive getting together. But it is a step towards thinking of what might happen in case China's intentions become more aggressive. So I would call it a reflective organization, a sort of a think tank of 4 major countries about where the future is taking this vast region. At the moment, there's no military dimension to this organization or this assembly of 4. And I don't think at the moment they are open to the idea of expanding it too much, because that has its own issues. Expanding it without careful planning could also mean dissensions, could also mean differing interests, which is not the requirement at the moment. At the moment, the focus is on these 4 countries to slowly but steadily expand cooperation.
Absolutely, because differences like on Ukraine, on Russia-Ukraine conflict, that remains. But Nikhil, once again, let's focus on what's happening at the Narendra Modi Stadium, because there, once again, it's diplomacy and cricket.
Well, Gaurav, I'm not an expert in commerce and economics, but I'll give you a personal anecdote. You were talking about Australia's relation with China. I was in Australia a few months ago, went to the biggest vineyard in Adelaide, and I met the owners, and they said the biggest exporter for them used to be China, but they're now looking towards India. Those exports have dwindled, and the one country that they really want to partner with is India, looking at India being one of the biggest importers of Australian wine. So I think that thing is a major change that you're beginning to see between Australia and India. But talking about...
we'll have a drink to that sooner than later.
Absolutely. I did at the time. I missed you. But talking about India versus Australia, of course, there's cricket diplomacy at play, but there's also a lot of cricket to be played. It's all about the 2 prime ministers, but it's also about the 2 gentlemen after whom this trophy is named. That is Alan Border and Sunil Gavaskar. And on India Today, we have the 2 of them exclusively speaking to us a short while ago. And I began that interaction by asking former India captain Sunil Gavaskar as to how the atmosphere was like when he was entering the stadium. Was it any different to any other test match that he had attended before?
Well, I can tell you, this is the first time I've actually, I'm coming to the ground when the moon is setting and not the sun is rising, because I've taken a couple of pictures of the moon set as we've come to the ground. And it's still around, so the moon will probably take another 20 minutes for the moon to set. But so it's a different feeling altogether, but quite exciting to have the 2 leaders of the countries which are going to be doing battle on the cricket field, to have the 2 leaders coming down to especially watch the game. I think that's a very exciting feeling.
Okay, a very different scenario to what Sunil Gavaskar witnessed. He said the moon was out while the time he was entering the stadium. It was afternoon in Australia when we were talking to Alan Border, and I began by asking him, Mr. Border, the India-Australia cricket rivalry, it's always been very intense. You've been a part of this rivalry earlier as well. Tell us, how has it evolved through the years?
I think the ties between Australia and India go back, way before me, but certainly in my first tour in 1979, it was a bit of a culture clash, if you like. Aussies were a pretty brash lot, convict blood going back in time. So there was a bit of a clash of cultures between India and Australia, but we formed some good friendships. Ravi Shastri, Sunny himself, all of us, we got on. At the end of the day, we played hard out in the field, but we got on very well off the field. So, and that's carried on. I think now Australia-India is a huge series, and I think the cricket has been okay because we haven't seen the bat dominate. It's been the ball. The spin bowlers have enjoyed their time there, and the odd sparkling innings from the batsmen. But very different to my time. Normally the batsmen held sway for a couple of days, and then the spinners and the quickies came into it later as the wicket dried out. So we've had some great test matches over the time, and it continues to this day.
Saibai, to you, do you think the India-Australia cricket rivalry right now is at par with the Ashes or maybe even a step ahead?
Yes, I think this rivalry is. I don't know about the Ashes situation, but I think this rivalry definitely is something that the cricket fans of both countries, and in fact, cricket fans all over the world, look forward to, because it is well fought. Teams are very, very, very competitive. There's some unbelievable talent in both the teams. There are great players in both the teams, and so therefore, I think cricket is always very exciting when India and Australia play against each other.
That was a world exclusive that you just witnessed on India today. Both Sunil Gavaskar, Alan Border speaking to us, which is right now the grand finale of the Border Gavaskar series, the fourth and final test match that has already begun in Ahmedabad. I'm just going to take that question forward to Amrit Mathur. He's been a former cricket administrator, has been to many important tours as well during his career as a cricket administrator. Let me take that question to you that I asked Sunny Bhai. At the moment, yes, there is history with the Ashes. Yes, there is a lot of history with India versus Pakistan. Yeah. But contemporary cricket, would you say India, Australia, number one?
I think so. Because as Sunny mentioned, it's quality cricket. The top two teams playing and great talent on both sides. Now, there was this broadcast earlier where people were asked who you have come to look to watch today. Most people said Mr. Modi. And there were some who said other names, but I want to congratulate the gentleman who said he's come to watch Lion Bowl. I think that's terrific, because for two reasons. A, normally it's the batsmen who get all the attention and the adulation, and for somebody to mention a bowler that also a spinner from the opposing side, I think it's fantastic advertisement for cricket, that you can have a fan who's so invested, who's so interested, and I actually come to watch a particular player in a test situation. Great.
Just talk to us about the fact that so many people have turned up. We're getting to hear maybe 130,000 will be there in the stadium. I understand a lot of it is also because they've come in to watch the two prime ministers too. But what does this do to test cricket, which is right now fighting for survival? We've seen it even in the big test centers in India, crowds dwindling, not coming in terms of you'd rarely see about 20% of the stadium being filled. Do you think this could be that impetus that test cricket also needed based on the event that happened today?
Listen, regarding test cricket, there are two contradictory strands. There is a set of test cricket which is, I think, not popular. If you have two countries playing, maybe not the top teams, so nobody watches. Even recently, there have been many instances. Also, there's an issue of quality. If the test cricket is competitive and has quality, people will turn up. Australia played South Africa recently in Australia, nobody watched, because the South Africans were just not competing. But the other stand is, especially in India, if India is doing well, people turn up. Yeah. People want to watch, and people want to watch India win. So there are certain areas in Australia, India, England, where test cricket is healthy. You find people to come and watch in England. People will normally turn up in Australia. In India, it is actually a better situation, that regardless of who's playing, as long as India is there, India is winning, we have people turning up.
But when you say regardless of who's playing, earlier we would read a lot, hear a lot about the cricketing rivalries. So you had the Ashes and then you had India-Pakistan. These were the two massive rivalries. Right. Has Australia replaced Pakistan as the biggest cricketing rivalry now, India-Australia, and not the Ashes? And is Pakistan now relegated because economy is very important?
Listen, India-Pakistan is obviously a huge series. Or every time they play, the level of interest is unprecedented. But for various reasons, we've not been playing. We haven't played Test cricket, only participating in ICC tournament. So that's taken a back seat maybe for that reason. But while that's taken a back seat, India-Australian rivalry has grown. I think just because of the quality it produces, the competitive nature of the two teams, the talent of the two teams, great players. Even today, it would be terrific if, say, Steve Smith makes 100, Virat Kohli makes a big score. So people look forward to these top players producing good results in a competitive situation. So I think Test cricket is alive. It's healthy in India, in Australia, in England, but in other countries it's seriously struggling.
Ambassador Dogra, since you've also seen, like Amrit Mathur, been on ground zero, seen India-Pakistan so close once upon a time, is that rivalry on its way out?
No, I mean, we've not played too much of cricket between India and Pakistan for some years because of well-known reasons. I mean, India's declared policy is that if you keep on indulging in terror, we cannot shake hands on the cricket ground. But to answer the question that you all started with, which is today's biggest rivalry in sports, I think my vote would certainly be in favor of India-Pakistan because it's an emotional issue. It's not so much the question of enmity, but it is the question of two very close neighbors who had a shared past wanting to get better of each other. I'll give you a personal example. This was, I think, 93 or so, or 94, and there was an Indo-Pakistan cricket match at that time in Dubai. I think it was a one-day match. And those days we weren't doing so well against Pakistan, and I knew we were going to lose. I was in Karachi at that time, and I was invited to a dinner where the Pakistani Prime Minister was going to be there. The host had told me in advance. So I timed my arrival after the match, about 15 minutes later, so that they don't get embarrassed in terms of celebrating their victory. So as I anticipated, Pakistan won, and as I entered the house, the door opened, and I could see huge amounts of laughter, and Prime Minister of Pakistan at that time leading that laughter. So when I entered, there was a sudden pause. So I told, addressing the Prime Minister, अब तो हम क्रिकेट में हार गए हैं, दोस्ती तो कर लीजिए. So that is the sentiment. I mean, there's a desire for friendship and there's intense rivalry also. That cannot be replaced by any other competition between other two countries, be it India, Australia, India, England, or Australia, England, because there is a particular sentimental quality of this relationship.
But that desire for dosti is more from our side, is what the impression is, considering terrorism from there continues. And you were there on ground, 2004 in Pakistan, when massive security was provided to the Indian contingent.
Yeah, the security was unprecedented because there had been some instances of terror just before the tour, and there was concern whether India should be touring. But ultimately, we put forward some conditions for the team to travel to Pakistan, and which Pakistan met. And in fact, ultimately the security was perhaps excessive. You had a helicopter on the top of a bus, flying above the bus. You had commandos inside the team bus. You had armored vehicles in front, in the back. There were snipers on buildings. The traffic blocked off for the team to travel. So initially the players were a bit apprehensive. Ke kahan aa gaye? Is it safe? Are we okay playing here? But I think those things are now eased. We are not playing in Pakistan, we haven't toured. But just to get back to the point of the rivalry between India and Pakistan, it is still the #1 rivalry. It's a commercial blockbuster. If you look at the ICC events where we play, so the ICC will have the India-Pakistan play right in the beginning to kickstart interest in the competition. Recently we had the Asia Cup in Dubai, and in that it was so structured that there would be 2 guaranteed India-Pakistan matches and a possible third if we came to the final. So each match has huge commercial implications in terms of broadcast revenue, media revenues, spectator interest, ticket sales, and not just all this. The amount of revenue you make from hospitality at a ground is huge. It could be $1 million per day in terms of just food and drinks. So commercially huge. I think in terms of public interest also very big, just that the situation is such that we are not playing each other so often.
So it's just that for India, Australia to come to that level of rivalry, minus the conflict, minus the terror, minus the conflict, it would still take some time.
It will. Just to add on to what Mr. Mathur was saying, that, you just there's a school of thought that says that, okay, the numbers in Test cricket are diminishing. One way to ensure that Test cricket is healthy is to ensure an India-Pakistan Test series, because that's going to be a blockbuster. One, because of the shared past, as Ambassador Dogra was mentioning. The other is that you haven't really played each other for a long time. So you really want to see the two countries participating. One thing I'll tell you, when I was at ground, and this was recently in Australia, when there was an India-Pakistan clash to begin with, and India won a very close contest. It was a money spinner, yes, for the ICC. Everyone who came said they got their money's worth. You'd be surprised to know that majority of Pakistani fans that I met after the game were not upset that Pakistan lost. They were happy. They were happy because Virat Kohli got runs. You'd be amazed at the kind of popularity that Virat Kohli has. In fact, I was speaking to a few Pakistani players who mentioned that there are more people wearing Virat jerseys in Pakistan than even their captain Babar Azam. That's how popular he is. So, I mean, I understand that you completely agree with the stand. There cannot be any sort of terrorism and you can indulge in sport. It cannot. But I think if you want to look at a rivalry, that will be a blockbuster. That will ensure that your streets are empty and nobody is going out of their houses. That only an India-Pakistan game can get.
Listen, the respect the Pakistan fans and even the players have for, say, Indian players is huge.
Yeah.
Recently I saw some television programs coming out of Pakistan, and the top players were really effusive in their praise for Virat and how he won that game.
Yeah.
An interesting aside is the bowler who suffered at Virat's hand said later that my ambition in life is to sometime get Virat out. That will be my greatest achievement, that I've got a player of his caliber out in a cricket
And just as Gaurav, just to add, just as we're saying that how India-Australia has changed. Australia were always the more dominant team versus India, and India now the more dominant side. It's changed when you talk about India-Pakistan, because Ambassador Dogra was talking about those 90 matches that you saw in Sharjah. Pakistan were the more dominant team. That's not the case anymore. So India, of course, have gone a step, or I'd say maybe a couple more steps ahead of Pakistan when it comes to cricket.
So India is the dominant team even now. That actually makes you feel good when you're going into a match, when you're watching the match, even if Steve Smith bats first, his side bats first. But Ambassador Dogra, this is an advantage that India must continue to drive home. And perhaps when we look at these images of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese at the Narendra Modi Stadium, that's the advantage India is driving home to Australia. Watch our cricket and watch our power, whether it's our economic power or India emerging on the strategic front.
Well, there's no doubt that India has now become a player, and not just a player in the sense of being economically the rising star or being militarily more confident, but it is a player in terms of its council. Let me start with a few years back when the world was in a huge financial crisis in 2007-2008, and which was really the start of G20. That time, people like Tony Blair and, if I recall correctly, George Bush, they turned to Dr. Manmohan Singh for advice on how to get out of that crisis. So similarly, Mr. Vajpayee was a hugely respected leader whenever there were meetings or summits of this kind where more than one country was involved. His voice was heard and listened to. Same is happening now with Mr. Modi. So India is now in a different league. It is not bracketed in the Indo-Pakistan tu meh any longer, fortunately. It has risen above that. It has issues with Pakistan. It has issues of concern, huge concern with China. But that is not constraining its role in the world. That's not constraining its role as a sane voice in the world affairs. So I think we've come a long way from where we were in 1947, and it's a happy circumstance. There are, of course, many things to
for Australia
achieve,
from this trip, Ambassador,
in terms of economic development.
What are takeaways for Australia from this trip?
The takeaway from Australia, naturally, I mean, whenever a Prime Minister comes visiting, he would have his agenda, he would have his targets. And since he's come with a 30-member business delegation, he would want some contracts. He may also want some investment coming in from India into Australia, not just Australian investment in India. So I think this trip is primarily has an economic dimension, with Chinese worries as a red flag for both the leaders. So I would rate the economic side of the issue as of prime importance. Your colleague just mentioned about the wine exports by Australia to China. In fact, China very consciously decided to reduce its wine imports from Australia as a sort of a punitive step against Australia because of its activism in Quad and otherwise. So Australia is looking, yes, absolutely, to India as a big market.
Okay, we're looking at these images of Prime Minister Narendra Modi now leaving the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad after that spectacular ceremony that took place with the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Now begins the second leg, equally important, of this visit of the Australian Prime Minister. The first leg was in Ahmedabad, the second leg in Mumbai, and then the summit that takes place in the national capital in Delhi. As Ambassador Dogra was explaining, the business aspect, very, very important for the Australians. They're looking at trade and security, remains top agenda for them. Coal, LNG, lithium for battery manufacturing, hydrogen import for India. And that again, Ambassador Dogra, very, very important given India's extremely ambitious goals on renewable energy targets, 50% of energy requirement by 2030 being met by renewable energy, sir.
Well, India would be one of the rare countries in the world which has set itself an ambitious goal in terms of renewable energy and is well on its way to hopefully achieving it. So in that sense, any Indo-Australian cooperation would be useful for both the countries, not just for India. So yes, the new frontiers of technology are an area that both the countries are keen on working on, especially in light of the fact that there are interests, for example, from Taiwan in setting up semiconductor factories in India. There are interests from American side, like Apple, wanting to expand its manufacturing facilities in India. So Australians are watching these developments very carefully, and they want to participate in order to profit from the opportunities that are coming up in India while it is drying elsewhere in the world.
In fact, they call it early advantage, early movers advantage on commercial deals with India, on economic deals with India, on the on agreements that they hope to achieve with India. So on this visit, and given the number of visits that are happening, this is a summit. You had Penny Wong, the foreign minister, here recently for the Raisina dialogue. You've had the Quad foreign ministers meeting. You have two of their ministers, energy minister, tourism minister, who's here just now. A huge shift in Australian engagement with India in the past decade, you'd say?
Well, yes, certainly, there's no doubt about it, and there's no denying that fact, because if you just look at the trade statistics, or if you look at the number of students going to Australia for studies, the increase is phenomenal, and that can only happen when leadership shows interest in each other. To give you one statistic, the last prime ministerial visit by India to Australia was during the time of Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. And after that, Mr. Modi went there in 2014. So that was a huge gap. Once you start visiting each other, then at the leadership level, then the rest starts following. Maybe not immediately, but within a couple of years at the maximum, if there is follow-up. To give you another example, just recently, the Indo-Australian Economic and Trade Agreement was finalized, which makes it easier for Australian exports to flow into India and vice versa. So these are facilitators which lead to increase in a relationship, and you are absolutely right that in recent years those technical drawbacks have been taken care of, those roadblocks have been cleared, and now the way ahead is much smoother.
But, things like India's association or proximity to Russia, India refusing to criticize Russia, India continuing to take so much energy, oil from Russia. Does that remain a niggle, or sometimes when some of the commentary in Australia talks about, and it's absolutely incorrect, lack of freedom of expression in India, does that remain a niggle in relationship, or is this par for the course?
Well, I don't think in international affairs there is anything called a fixed marriage. We are not married to America. We are not in American camp or Australian camp or British camp. We are independent countries, just as they are sovereign countries, and they have to take care of their interests. All our complaints, all our appeals to America about Pakistan had no effect at all.
Yeah.
America went ahead with its relationship with Pakistan at its whims and fancies. It regretted, of course, but despite that, for one reason or the other, it felt that it must have a foot in Pakistani camp, because it thought mistakenly now that its interests, strategic interests, were best served there. I think Afghanistan taught them a lesson, but still America is not leaving its Pakistan relationship. So when that is so, how can America expect that India should abandon its past association, forget about all the help that Russia and India have given to each other, all the help that Russia has given to support India's defense preparedness, and sit itself squarely in the American lap? That's not going to happen, and that's not wise either. So after protests, which were largely for public reasons, because American leadership understands India's needs and compulsions vis-a-vis Russia, they have quietened down. You don't hear too much about that. So those noises or little noises which persist are motivated noises of the arms industry, which wants India to buy more from, let's say, America or some other Western country. But that's not going to affect our decisions making or our relationship with an established partner like Russia.
How would China be viewing this? How would China be viewing this summit with Anthony Albanese, the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting, the massive engagement that India is having with the world, especially in our G20 presidency, sir?
Well, again, China makes noises strategically. It makes noises in anticipation of what could happen. And I think it is correct in that sense that by making noises, it thinks it will be able to restrain or constrain a relationship like Quad, for example, which has potential. But at the same time, let me bring in the Pakistan angle. India's worries about, for example, the China-Pakistan economic corridor have not hampered China's efforts to go through Indian territory, which is now occupied by Pakistan. Nor has it hampered China's ambitions in Gwadar. So China's noises are not going to make any difference to the Quad relationship or the Quad plans or India's relationship with any of the Quad countries. But it is certainly all those noises will act as a reminder that China is not too happy about it.
But, okay, you know, this conversation about how China would be reacting, you talked about Pakistan. These are some very interesting aspects because as far as India is concerned, that distance is not there. The distance that other countries may enjoy with Pakistan, a state sponsor of terror, or China, that's actually wreaking havoc on economies in several parts of the world, and including the strategic threat that China poses to countries like Japan, Australia and India, to an extent even to the United States of America. Some of these aspects we'll talk about on the other side of a quick break. Stay with us here on our continuing coverage on India Today.
India Today Conclave 2023, March 17th and 18th, New Delhi. Listen to Janvi Kapoor, Malaika Arora, Anita Sengupta, Abha Adams, Hajar Chena Ramani, Dr. Ruha Shadab. The India Moment.
Another catchphrase which we've noticed here at MWC and all around the world since November, I think the last time that we met, has been generative artificial intelligence. Generative AI, ChatGPT being spoken about all over the world. How much of an impact do you think that will have on the workflow on the tech side, on exactly how a tech company operates, on how our jobs will pan out in the next few months?
I am so happy about the generative AI. The reason I'm happy is it's the same way. Because we are in Mobile World Congress, I'll give you an example that 95, 96, if you remember, India was one of the most highest cost per minute call, and incoming and outgoing both charge 16 rupees a minute. And those blind calls, call me back. I was from that upbringing, and I land in Hong Kong airport. There was this bank of phones, but people were talking on a mobile phone. And I came back and I said, this is an industry you need to be in. The convenience was 10 steps away. People were talking on mobile phones. So what happened? Mobile phone automated the public phone systems.
Correct.
It automated everything that came along. And I don't have to describe to you whether it's a health tech, fintech, media tech, whatever device it is.
Absolute disruptor.
Now, to me, it did not take away jobs, it created jobs. Now, this is exactly what I think about generative AI. That the use cases are there, and the more they get defined, that means more jobs it will create. Technology is the heart of everything.
It's lights, camera, action on the biggest poll battle of 2023. And the BJP is doing everything they can to retain power in Karnataka. The double engine of Karnataka Congress, DK Shivkumar and Siddaramaiah, are doing everything they can to oust the BJP. But wait. Haven't we forgotten something? The JDS, aka the Kingmaker. Welcome to the State of War Karnataka. It's lights, camera, action on the biggest poll battle of 2023. And the BJP is doing everything they can to retain power in Karnataka. The double engine of Karnataka Congress, DK Shivkumar and Siddaramaiah, are doing everything they can to oust the BJP. Oh, wait. Haven't we forgotten something? The JDS, aka the Kingmaker. Welcome to the State of War Karnataka.
Big story, we are now getting you a US intelligence assessment on what India will do if there is a terror attack from Pakistan on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's military offensive. And this report says, if provoked by Pakistan, Prime Minister Narendra Modi can give it back. The US warns Modi might retaliate with force. This American intelligence assessment after Balakot, remember Balakot happened in 2019 after Pulwama terror attack. It says no more kid glove treatment for Pakistan under the Narendra Modi government. It's a strong new India that gets new global recognition. I want to cut across to India Today's Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan joining us with more on this big story. Geeta, bring us details of this American assessment.
Well, this is a very important and a big one, Gaurav. It's the annual threat assessment of countries, regions that could pose a threat to the United States of America, but they also go ahead and talk about potential interstate conflicts that could amount to having an impact on the globe, as also particularly on the United States of America. And in that, the assessment on India-Pakistan is very clear that should Pakistan try to be adventurous yet again, India will not shy away from using military as an option. So the military option is absolutely open and exists under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, very specifically mentioning Gaurav, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, saying that Pakistan has had a long history of supporting anti-India militant groups, and under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India is more likely than in the past to respond with military force to perceived or real Pakistani provocations. This is a huge development, but also the fact that in terms of how India is perceived in not taking action against India lightly and also retaliating and responding in same measure.
Stay with me, Geeta. Very, very interesting. Ambassador Dogra, what do you make of this assessment? Point one, point two, a realization that the United States realizes that Balakot airstrike wasn't perhaps just a one-off?
Well, there are two sides to your question, and in fact, there are two sides to this American report. Number one, I would like to ask these American intelligence officials or State Department officials who had a hand in this report, what would America do if it was subjected to terror attack by one country or the other? What did it do after 9/11? It went ahead and attacked Afghanistan.
Yes.
It tries to go to the source and wipe it out of the face of the earth. Their president has said it many times. So how does it expect that a big country like India, today the world's largest populated country, how should it react? Should it just sit back and watch the terror attack with admiration, or should it act to save its citizens? The second point is their assumption that every time there's a terror attack, India will go ahead and take military action. That is not borne out either by the past precedents or by the reaction of Prime Minister Modi during his term.
Yes.
He did not order the military to cross the border after Pathankot airbase attack. He waited patiently, hoping that Pakistan authorities would be able to or would like to check their terror machine. When they did not, only then operations like Balakot took place. So it's not as if Prime Minister Modi's actions are impulsive. I'm sorry, American assessment is dead wrong on this one. Yes, it is a more reactive, assertive government that we have today in terms of reaction to a terror attack, but it is not an irresponsible government. I think that is the distinction that these writers of the American report have forgotten to take into consideration.
And their intelligence
India's reaction is
Yes.
not knee-jerk.
India's reaction clearly not knee-jerk,
India's
very
reaction is
well
not
thought
knee-
out. But in your appreciation, if there, God forbid, if there is another terror strike sponsored by the Pakistani state, would India's response be even more severe? Is that the message that this report tries to give out?
Well, that's the message this report tries to give out, but I think we have to think in our terms also, because we cannot be led by forged reports, fake reports, or motivated reports. Unfortunately, the world we are living in is full of such actions by sometimes the government themselves, because they want the other country to react in a particular way. So there is a bit of scaremongering, or there is a bit of auto-suggestion in reports like this. And America is no saint. In fact, it is one of the leading countries in putting up these false kind of reports. But to answer your question, whether India would react to every terror attack in a forceful manner, as I said already, no. It depends on the scale of the attack, and it depends on our assessment whether the establishment's hand has been firmly behind that terror attack, as it happened in 26/11, or as it happened in Balakot. So I think India weighs carefully but quickly that what were the circumstances that led to this terror attack or potential terror attack.
So
and how
perhaps
should
there
India
is
react?
there is an appreciation of an assertive new India that will not take it on the chin, but give it back and call it a preemptive strike. Ambassador Dogra, for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast, many thanks. We're slipping into a quick break. Geeta Mohan will continue to get us much more on this big development on the other side of this break, and of course in the times ahead. Paulami Saha joins you on the other side of a quick break. Stay with us.
Actor turned politician Khushbu Sundar. Khushbu, who recently was nominated as a member of the National Commission for Women, has opened up about her story of how she was sexually assaulted as a child and teenager by her own father. The BJP leader says that her father began abusing her at the age of 8 and she could only speak up against him after she turned 15. She added that when she eventually revolted against her father, he abandoned the family and they didn't know where the next meal would come from. Well, joining me now is Khushbu Sundar to tell us why she's come out and spoken out in this manner. Khushbu Sundar, you've come out openly, spoken out about sexual abuse you were inflicted upon as a child by your father. Huge admission that you've made, and it perhaps has taken you a lot of time to actually come out and go public with it. What eventually made you decide to speak out about the sexual abuse that you were confronted with as a child by your own father?
Rajiv, I think it's just, you need to find courage at some point to speak the truth, what you have been through. My daughters have been my biggest supporters. And it's not that they come to know about my sexual abuse through this news, what I've spoken. They have known about it much earlier. I did open to them about it, and they are aware of it. So my family, my husband or my children, it's not a news to them. They know about it. But to me, I think, when you look around, every time there's an abuse, every time there's a rape, the first thing what everyone wants to know is ask the girl, what did you do to provoke the man? तुमने क्या किया? तुमने कैसे कपड़े पहने थे? तुम उस वक्त वहां क्या कर रही थी? You would have spoken to him. You would have given him the lead to be there. I think an 8-year-old does not give any lead. Though who's raped does not give any lead when she is raped. A nun is raped, and who do you blame that for? I mean, it's crazy that every time the victim is asked these kind of questions and the perpetrators go free, unse koi sawal nahi puchta that what gave you the guts and courage to behave in such a beastly manner.
All political parties traveling from different parts.
Armed with facts,
Looking at political back.
she takes the news by its horns.
Do you think the future of these students are not hampered?
Fierce, bold, and direct, setting the tone for the biggest stories from every corner and every angle. Expect nothing but the unfiltered truth.
News first, niceties later. Watch me, Nabila Jamal, on India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
News coming in right now. Congress attacks Prime Minister Modi over lap of honor. Congress's self-obsessed Prime Minister jibe at Modi. Congress says a lap of honor in stadium named after him. This is height of self-obsession, is what the Congress party has said. This is in fact a tweet which has been put out by Member of Parliament and General Secretary in charge of communications for the Congress party, Jairam Ramesh. Jairam Ramesh tweets, and I quote over here, doing a lap of honor in a stadium you named after yourself in your own lifetime. Height of self-obsession. This after Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese took a lap of honor, as you can see in those pictures, at the Narendra Modi Stadium earlier this morning, where the fourth test between India and Australia has begun. Both Prime Ministers were there in the initial hours to watch the match as it began, and as you can see, they took a lap of honor across the stadium earlier before the match started on a chariot fashioned out of a golf cart, waving out to the crowds amid loud cheer and applause. But the Congress, of course, now taking a pot shot at Prime Minister Modi. Jairam Ramesh tweets, doing a lap of honor in a stadium you named after yourself in your own lifetime. Height of self-obsession. Those images earlier from the Narendra Modi Stadium, which in fact was formerly known as the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel Stadium. Rahul Gautam is now joining me live on this. Rahul, the Congress, they're taking pot shots at Prime Minister Modi for taking a lap of honor in a stadium named after him.
Absolutely, and if you remember,
the day this stadium was named after Prime Minister Narendra Modi, at that point of time also Congress party criticized the move, saying that this only shows that how PM Modi is obsessed with himself and how BJP is trying to portray him as larger than life. And the same thing is happening now when Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Australian PM, they both took this lap of victory inside the stadium. The Congress party's media in charge, Mr. Jairam Ramesh, is saying that this only shows the height of self-obsession, given the fact that you were taking a lap of victory inside a stadium that you named after yourself. So obviously you can expect that this is certainly going to escalate the war of words between, and you can expect the rebuttal would be soon coming in from the BJP side as well, given the fact that BJP has been saying that this stadium was named after Narendra Modi only to honor the aspirations of people who have been voting for Prime Minister Narendra Modi for close to 15 years, and because there was affection amongst the people for PM Modi, that's why the committee had decided to name this particular stadium after Narendra Modi. So you can expect that that BJP will soon be fielding a senior BJP minister or a BJP leader to rebuttal or to come clean on these allegations, and expect that they would also be reminding Congress party about some of their own previous mistakes.
That's right. Also, like you said, the BJP's, of course, allegation and countercharge has been, Rahul, that the Congress named several monuments, structures, roads after their own leaders. And this is the first time that the BJP, this is one of those times that the BJP has named a structure, a stadium, which is inside a larger complex named after Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel on Prime Minister Modi.
Well, there's the same charge that BJP has been making, for quite some time, that how there are over 1,000, institutions and schemes that have been named after Nehru Gandhi family, which only show that how there is sycophancy, prevailing amongst the Congress people as far as Nehru Gandhi family is concerned. And, therefore, they are saying that merely, naming a portion of the stadium, that too after Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has been the chief minister of this particular state, people have been voting for him. And in fact, he was, truly regarded, by the people of Gujarat. This only shows the anti-poor mindset of the Congress party, because they are not able to digest that somebody, coming from very humble origins, rising all the way to the chief minister spot and now to the PM post. The BJP is saying that they're not able to digest this, and because of the fact that they always, believe that one family, has the right to rule over the world, rule over the country, and therefore they are not able to, come, in terms with this particular, naming thing. So you can expect that, that this is certainly going to blow, and you can expect that it's certainly going to escalate in coming days, given the fact that BJP, as I was telling you earlier also, has been repeating the claim that how there are over 1,000, institutions and schemes that have been named after Nehru Gandhi family, and you expect that BJP will certainly be coming with their own rebuttal.
Okay. Rahul, thank you so much for joining us with all of those details. Rahul, of course, they're reporting on how the Congress is now taking pot shots at Prime Minister Modi for taking a lap of honor at a stadium named after him. Expect the Bharatiya Janata Party to respond very soon to that. We're getting more breaking news that's coming in at the moment. Now, a team of the Enforcement Directorate has reached the Tihar jail to question Manish Sisodia, former Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi, in the Liquorgate scam. Now, this is the second time in 3 days that Sisodia is being questioned by the ED. So, a team of the Enforcement Directorate, the central agency, has now reached Tihar jail to question Manish Sisodia, who's lodged in Tihar jail after being sent into judicial custody recently. Remember that he was arrested by the CBI earlier in the same alleged Liquorgate scam. And then, when in the last instance at court, the CBI did not seek an extension of their custody, Manish Sisodia was sent into judicial custody. His bail plea, in fact, is to come up tomorrow. But before that, the Enforcement Directorate has already sprung into action. It has already gone to Tihar jail and questioned him, and this will be the second time that the Enforcement Directorate will be questioning Manish Sisodia in jail itself. They've already reached Tihar jail. So in 3 days, the second time that Manish Sisodia is being subjected to Enforcement Directorate drilling. They are also looking into allegations of money laundering as far as the excise policy scam is concerned. The excise policy of Delhi government, which was later withdrawn after being flagged by officials within the government. The Chief Secretary had sent a report to the Lieutenant Governor, and the AAP government then withdrew the excise policy, which had already been implemented. But the trouble for the Aam Aadmi Party and its leaders continues to only escalate. Former Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi there on your screens earlier, from when he was produced in court the last time, and the CBI did not seek an extension of his custody. The court sent him into judicial custody. His bail plea, in fact, before the court comes up for hearing tomorrow, but the Enforcement Directorate continues to grill Manish Sisodia with regard to the money trail, the alleged bribes and kickbacks that were paid to members of the Aam Aadmi Party in order to secure business as far as the excise policy is concerned. Akshay Dongre, my colleague, is now joining me over the phone line. Akshay, the Enforcement Directorate has sprung into action. So clearly, while Manish Sisodia's bail plea hearing is to come up before court tomorrow, it is very likely that the Enforcement Directorate could proceed forward and even arrest him before that happens.
Well, that is very much a possibility now. The Enforcement Directorate had sought 3 days as far as interrogating Mr. Manish Sisodia is concerned. The Enforcement Directorate teams had reached Tihar Jail yesterday and day before yesterday, so today is the 3rd day. And this is regarding the money trail. This is regarding all the new revelations and all the new evidences that is coming in front of the Enforcement Directorate after the investigation that's ongoing right now. Now, what you are saying is absolutely true. The Enforcement Directorate can actually arrest Mr. Manish Sisodia, who is in judicial custody right now, and can seek his custody to probe that how exactly Manish Sisodia was involved in this entire excise policy scam. It remains to be seen that when exactly that will take place. That action can be taken place by the Enforcement Directorate. But as of now, the Enforcement Directorate already at Tihar Jail. Interrogation for the 3rd day is going on. And if the ED finds sufficient ground to arrest Mr. Manish Sisodia and take him in Enforcement Directorate custody to probe him further, that can happen by today evening. So that is very much a possibility. So as far as the Aam Aadmi Party is concerned, despite all of the accusations that they are levelling against the central government, that they are using the central agencies to target the opposition, the Aam Aadmi Party is very much in trouble right now.
Okay, Akshay, stay on with us. Munish Pandey, my colleague, is also joining us live at the moment. Munish, what does this mean in terms of, Manish Sisodia actually being in more trouble? Is the Enforcement Directorate likely to arrest him as well, because his bail plea comes up before the court tomorrow?
Well, Paulina, this is the second time in last 3 days when the Enforcement Directorate officials will be questioning Manish Sisodia. Now, why today is going to be important, not only for Manish Sisodia, but also for Enforcement Directorate, because tomorrow his bail application will be heard by the court. And in CBI case, what we have seen is that at least 5 accused have got bail. So only relief which the Aam Aadmi Party or Manish Sisodia was expecting, that in CBI case they might get bail. But today, what the Enforcement Directorate officials have told India today, that there is a high possibility that Manish Sisodia will be arrested. Because day before yesterday, when Manish Sisodia was questioned regarding the excise policy, the profit margin of 12% and the deleted file of the draft copy of excise policy, Manish Sisodia chose to not answer. This is what the ED sources have told us. Apart from that, Manish Sisodia was also confronted with 2 material evidences, which means that 2 witnesses were brought in by the Enforcement Directorate at the Tihar Jail, where they were confronted with Manish Sisodia. So they are saying that at this point of time, they have sufficient evidence against Manish Sisodia. Today, again, he will be questioned regarding certain aspects of the excise policy, the meetings of Vijay Nair with the liquor businessman, and meeting of Manish Sisodia with Arvind Kejriwal and then excise secretary. So all these things will be asked by the ED officials to Manish Sisodia today, and by evening we have been given to understand is that if there are sufficient grounds, then Manish Sisodia will be placed under arrest. If Manish Sisodia is arrested today, it means that Manish Sisodia will be sent to ED custody tomorrow by the court, and later on Manish Sisodia again will be sent to Tihar jail, which means that for next couple of months Manish Sisodia or the Aam Aadmi Party cannot expect any relief as far as his bail is concerned.
Okay. Munish Pandey, they're tracking all those developments as far as the questioning of Manish Sisodia is concerned. Munish, thank you so much for joining us with those details. Actor-director Satish Kaushik has passed away at the age of 67. He was an actor, comedian, screenwriter, director and producer. We remember him for so many hits, be it Calendar in Mr. India or Pappu Peja in Deewana Mastana. He never failed to entertain us. As the news broke, people from all walks of life have started, in fact, paying their tributes to him. The shattering news of Kaushik's demise was shared by his close friend, actor Anupam Kher. Union Home Minister Amit Shah and many other senior leaders expressed grief on his demise. The late actor won several awards in his long career, including Filmfare Best Comedian Award in 1990 for Ram Lakhan and in 1997 for Sajan Chale Sasural. Satish Kaushik is survived by his wife and daughter.
I can't really believe that our dear friend Satish Kaushik is no more. A great actor, a great director, a great writer, and a great human being. We have spent a lot of time together. His presence in front of the camera, behind the camera, was absolutely